In this world, everyone has secrets. In this place, they will never succumb to sleep, nor will they accept change until the final purification. The woman finally reaches her destination and asks Angie if she has finished her preparations. When noble blood is spilled, those who persist will receive incorruptible life. It is time to transcend eternity and be blessed. Then, with a smile, the girl responds to her mother that she is ready to go. On this day, for the first time in her life, she received an invitation to the Duke's mansion. Cullinan Island is her home, with its lush beach forests and blue waves crashing against its shores. It was nurtured by the survivors of a devastating war on the continent that turned it into a land of abundance. On the island, people of various races live peacefully, united like kin. Guided by the faith of Kylam, they share a common purpose. Angie moved to Cullinan with her parents so young that she has no memory of the continent. Either way, she feels no need to cling to such memories, because she deeply loves the island and cannot imagine a place as wonderful as this. And all of this is possible thanks to the benevolence of the Duke and his family. On the way to the Duke's mansion, Angie's heart is racing with anxiety. Our protagonist, Angela Risdell, looks around the luxurious carriage, amazed. Now that she is on her way to the mansion, she feels that she can finally believe that this is truly real. After all, of all the people on the island, she was the one invited to keep Lord Kellic company, which is a tremendous honor. Kellic Roden, the sole heir of the Blackwell House, rulers of this island. But unfortunately, he has been confined within the walls of his mansion due to a long battle against an illness. The Duke's luxurious carriage leaves the girl at her destination. Meanwhile, Angie remembers her mother's instructions that she would visit Lord Kellic once a week to keep him company, and that, unfortunately, being sick for so long had made him quiet and sensitive, which might make him treat her indelicately. But Angie should try to understand and not be upset about it. This is for all of them who owe a debt of gratitude to the Blackwell House. A little unsure as she stands before the grand door, Angie hopes he will like what she prepared for him. She is greeted by the housekeeper, Louise Dunst. The girl politely greets the older lady, who asks her to come in. The housekeeper informs her that the young master is waiting. This makes Angie even more nervous since the moment has finally arrived. Taking a deep breath, she enters, following the housekeeper. The sweet girl looks around curiously at everything as she follows Louise. Everything is so perfect. The interior is rich, yet elegant. Angie is very surprised by the place, because it almost feels as if this place is like a completely different kingdom. She notices a wall filled with paintings of the Blackwell family, but one of the frames is empty. She looks curiously, assuming it must be reserved for Lord Kellic. She feels disappointed that there isn't a portrait of him and wonders what his appearance might be like. Looking at a painting of Duke Edward Blackwell, she thinks that perhaps he has bluish-gray eyes like his father. Someone calls the girl, snapping her out of her trance. It's Lady Louise looking at her from the top of the staircase. The housekeeper simply gestures to show her the way. A bit nervous at being caught in her youthful illusions, the girl just nods and immediately hurries up the stairs. They stop at the entrance of the young master's quarters, and Louise reminds her of the most important rules. Not to look directly at the Lord, and since he is very ill, if anything seems wrong, she should ask for help. She also tells the girl to answer only questions asked and not to make unnecessary comments. Angie agrees to everything she has been told. The housekeeper doesn't seem very confident about it, and her demeanor leaves the girl confused. Louise then knocks on the door before opening it and announcing her presence, asking for permission to enter. Soon, they are in the Lord's room. Angie looks around curiously as Louise announces her. The girl grows nervous when she hears Kellic's voice calling for the housekeeper. He doesn't seem very pleased, and he asks if he didn't make it clear that there would be no more visitors there. Hearing this makes Angie worry that her presence might be unwanted. There is a rumor that the reason Master Kellic is never seen outside his residence is because of the intense chemical treatments he underwent during his prolonged illness. The consequence was that his face was disfigured, and that the sight of his grotesque face would leave people frozen, as if they had looked at Medusa herself. That's why people avoid looking at him. Angie wonders if that is the reason why he doesn't want her presence there. The girl is nervous, but not because of his face. Meanwhile, the housekeeper asks him to accept her apologies for not asking his permission first. Kellic's voice interrupts her. He adds that, in any case, Louise cannot disobey his father's orders. The young master asks her if that isn't the reason, leaving the woman in silence. Kellic forgives her for this day. However, he warns that there will be no mercy next time and then asks the woman to leave. Before leaving, the housekeeper presses her hand firmly on the girl's shoulder. Louise tells Angie to go ahead and do what she came to do. With that, the lady leaves, leaving the two of them alone. I already didn't like this housekeeper. She gives off a creepy vibe. But that only makes the girl even more nervous, wondering what she should do, and if it's really okay for her to be there. After all, everyone has a debt of gratitude to the Blackwell house. She remembers asking her mother what to do if she were rejected. The young master's voice draws her attention. Angie looks in the direction of the voice, still feeling unsure. Then Kylek asks her to come closer. His request ends up surprising the girl, but Angie quickly steps closer as he instructs her not to get too near and to sit by the window. Sitting in a chair near the closed windows, Angie follows the instructions given. Still clearly uncomfortable, the young master asks her name, and she introduces herself as Angela Rizdal, saying he may call her Angie if he prefers. She explains that she is the daughter of the caretakers of the North Coast estate, which makes the Lord more interested and prompts him to ask why she is there. Angie says she is honored by this great privilege of keeping him company. Deep down, she is nervous, worried that he might find her story boring, but determined to fulfill her noble mission, she confidently says that she would like to read him the story she prepared. Kylek shows curiosity when Angie mentions the story. Angie humbly explains that it's nothing special, just a product of her imagination. Then she asks if he would like to hear her story. Angie remembers that when she received the invitation, she began to think about her skills. Although reading is her passion, embroidery and sewing are the skills she feels most confident about. However, she believes her embroidery could never impress a young nobleman used to luxury. She also thought of the countless books he must have read during his confinement in the mansion, far surpassing her humble collection, which means that reading a story from a book would likely not be anything new to Lord Kylek. However, she imagined that the young master, like her, on a sunny day, might have closed his book and, while watching the clouds, imagined that they resembled scenes from tales. Maybe Kylek would like to talk to someone who had imagined the same scene as him. Feeling more confident, Angie explains that he might notice the stories she tells are from well-known tales, but with endings created from her imagination. And if he could kindly listen to her versions of the stories, she would love to talk more afterward about what he thought. She also assures him that she won't be offended if he doesn't like the parts she created. Kylek comments that even if she does get offended by his remarks, it won't affect him. Angie stays quiet, embarrassed, knowing the Lord is right, but even so, she should proceed and tell him her version of the stories. The girl's eyes shine with joy at the Lord's interest, and he warns her that if it's a collection of nonsense, he won't hesitate to throw her out. She just needs to do what she always does. After all, everyone at the church enjoys her stories. Angie asks if he knows the story of the Cumaean Sibyl. She then asks for permission to tell him about the prophetess of ancient Greece. As she tells the story, her throat burns with thirst, and looking beyond the veil makes her uneasy. But still, Angie does her best, and Kylek allows her to finish the story without interrupting or dismissing her. After Angie completes her first mission, she leaves the mansion. She stands in front of the mansion gates, still impressed by everything that just happened. After all, the Lord himself asked her to return the following week at the same time, and even wished her a safe trip after calling her by her nickname. Still surprised, she believes this means she managed to impress him. At first, it was a bit frightening, but to the girl, he doesn't seem as hard to please as she had expected. As she plans her next story, she has no idea that she is being watched by Kylek. With a sad look, the young master watches the girl leave. That same night, a young boy was planning an escape. He pushes a boat with effort, finally reaching the water. The boy sighs, a bit tired, wiping the sweat from his forehead. He looks relieved, for he can finally escape this dreadful island. Elliot remembers his parents asking if he doesn't know what a precious blessing his life is, arguing that Duke Blackwell gathered all the survivors of the terrible war and allowed them to live on the island, while the continent is nothing less than a living hell. Sure that his parents don't know anything and that every day on the island is extremely suffocating, the boy believes there must be more places in the world to explore. Feeling more than ready to leave that island, Elliot begins to sail. As he does so, he looks around, amazed at how easy it was to leave. He can't even believe that no one has ever tried this before. However, as he sails, the huge structure catches Elliot's attention. He knows that structure marks the boundary between Cullinan Island and the rest of the world. As he passes through it, he knows he will have officially escaped. But while distracted, Elliot is attacked. Startled, Elliot tries to dodge and understand what is happening. Fear painted in his eyes, as he cries for mercy and help in the cold night. In a dungeon, other screams echo from a cell. In his cell, a man screams, begging for blood. Kylek watches with a bored expression from outside. The man in the cell then approaches the bars, screaming for him to hurry and bring blood quickly. The day dawns as if nothing had happened that night. Various sewing and embroidery tools are spread across the table. The women work happily as they share a pleasant conversation. They are amazed at Angie's exceptional embroidery skills. With a big smile, the girl thanks them for the compliments. Curious, one of the women asks what the flowers she embroidered on each piece are. Then Angie explains that they are marigolds and that she preferred to use them instead of putting her name. It's like a signature, besides being Angie's favorite flowers. Because whenever she sees them, Angie feels happy. That's why she says she would like to make clothes inspired by the beauty of these flowers one day. Angie smiles, thinking that the clothes will make anyone happy. And the people there encourage her, saying they know she will succeed one day. A girl surprises her by saying that she will create the most incredible clothes on Cullinan Island. This is Letitia Durbin, the only daughter of the Duke's administrator, who says Angie will become her exclusive seamstress. Invading her personal space, the girl asks if she understands that, and that she just has to sign a contract with her. Meanwhile, the others laugh, finding the interaction between the two very cute. Letitia is ready to make the deal right then and there, but Angie gets distracted, curious as she hears people nearby. They gossip that recently there have been reports of small animals found dead throughout the forest. She is surprised by the rumors since the island is such a peaceful place. Suddenly, a tall blonde man comes running toward the group of people. The people try to calm the man, who is even out of breath, worried about what might have happened. The man then reveals that the body of the boy Elliot was found on the south coast. The shocked people start whispering about what they've just heard, and one of the adult women tries to calm everyone, asking them to go home for now. Elliot is the only son of the Hawkins who run the distillery, and the residents want to understand what could have happened to him. A local resident says that apparently the boy tried to leave the island by boat, and this makes people think it was a punishment for betraying Duke Blackwell. One of the adults suggests that this should be used as an example to warn the other children of the dangers of leaving the island. A reminder that they should never try to go to the continent. Confirmed, dear listeners, this island is definitely a cult. These overly happy people give off very bad vibes. Our protagonist then tells us that afterward, the official news was that Elliot tried to escape the night before and was attacked by a horde of sharks. This sudden accident left the residents of Cullinan Island in shock. Meanwhile, Elliot's parents mourned inconsolably. Angie had never seen anyone in such a deep state of sadness before. A few days later, Angie is walking peacefully when Elliot's mother approaches her. She greets Angie, cheerfully asking how her day is going, which our protagonist finds a little strange. Strangely, the woman keeps talking, commenting on how beautiful the day is, almost as if that day were a divine blessing. Angie just smiles, finding Mrs. Hawkins's behavior very strange, since just a few days ago she was inconsolable, almost as if she had forgotten that her only son had died just a few days ago. Back at the Blackwell mansion, Angie is already there, fulfilling her duty. This time, the girl is sad as she says that Mrs. Hawkins's behavior seemed a little strange. She says she has never felt sadness before, so she is curious if it's a feeling that can disappear in the blink of an eye. Killick thinks for a moment before answering and then says that sometimes there might be more things than meets the eye. Being a gentleman, he offers her tea to help her calm down, noticing that she was a little shaken by what she had seen. Angie takes the cup, and the drink is still warm and seems delicious. Killick takes advantage of the moment and recommends that she talk about these kinds of concerns only with him, because just as she found Mrs. Hawkins' behavior peculiar, others might think she is suspicious for thinking that way. This makes Angie feel somewhat insecure, but she trusts the young master and says she will be careful. Angie thanks Killick for the warning since she hadn't thought about that possibility. She looks at him, surprised that he listened to her outpouring so patiently. She feels happy, thinking that maybe he likes her a little. But then, Killick comments that if she had a bit of common sense, she would have done that without needing to be told. And Angie realizes she was wishful thinking. Angie decides to drink the tea she is holding. As she brings the cup close to her face, she notices the pleasant smell. The aroma is slightly different from the usual rose tea that the island residents drink, and she believes her parents would like it too. Killick watches her reflection in the mirror and says that if she liked it so much, she can take some leaves with her. He says he will tell the housekeeper to set aside some leaves. Angie says she will love that and thanks the young man. Her cheeks flushed just from his gesture. Killick is surprised by Angie's cute smile. He then asks about the story she told him last time, about how the Sibyl, the priestess of Kume, wished for immortality, and how the god Apollo granted her 1,000 years of life. But as she watched her body wither over those years, she realized she had received a curse and not a blessing. Smiling, Angie confirms this, secretly happy that he actually remembered. Killick wants to know her answer to that. If Apollo came and offered her immortality and eternal youth, what would she say? A proposal that might be a bit difficult to refuse. Angie thinks for a moment about the proposal and responds that she would refuse the offer. which surprises the young master. So he wants to know why. Angie explains that she would probably be tempted to accept the gift without questioning it first. She says that the beauty and meaning of all things come from their impermanence. The girl says that even the most exquisite flowers wither when they reach the end of their life, making way for new buds. With a charming smile, Angie shares her thought that this is providence itself. Killick, based on what she just said, asks if, for her, eternity means nothing. Without hesitation, Angie says yes. And this humble narrator agrees because after a long time, things must become a little boring. Angie also says that she's sure many people would wish for eternal life. With that, she wants to know what the young lord thinks about it. Killick is impressed that there is still someone like her on the island. But before he can say anything, someone knocks at the door. He stands up with a worried expression, realizing that their time together this week is over. The housekeeper has come to fetch Angie, and she says goodbye to the lord, promising to return the following week. And she is escorted out by Louise. The young lord sighs, looking worried or sad about something. Louise returns and asks what he thinks. She wants to know what he thought of the new remedy. Without answering, Killick pulls the curtain closed, irritated. The boy asks Louise not to call his new companion that. After all, the mere mention of that word puts him in a bad mood. We are transported to the past, to a much younger version of Killick asking his father what exactly a remedy is. And if someone is chosen to be his remedy, what will happen to that person? But his father looks at him with an intimidating gaze, making it very clear that when blood chooses someone, there is no turning back. The remedy will be his for all eternity. Clenching his fists, frightened, Killick seems to finally understand something. He asks his father if that was why he took his mother's life, because she was his remedy. A remedy is someone who preserves their master by offering their blood until they wither into a leather shell. And it all began with a terrible curse born from something humans should never have dared to covet. And that is why Killick will do everything to never walk the same path as his father. Back to Angie's life on the island. The girls gossip about the Duke, saying there are rumors that he had other children. The redhead confirms the rumor, saying she overheard the adults talking about it. Years ago, Duchess Eugenia gave birth to many children, including twins, but none survived after birth, except for Lord Killick, the only survivor, and that the Duchess passed away shortly after having him. Taking advantage of the gossip, she asks the girls if they've heard the rumors about the young master's face. Letitia asks if she's referring to the medication he takes and how it supposedly makes his face disfigured. The redhead confirms and continues, saying that the rumors claim this is why he usually covers his face, and that his real appearance is that of a terrifying monster. Hearing this scares all the girls, and of course, just like us, Angie isn't very shaken. The girl keeps saying there's a lot of concern since the Duke of Blackwell is currently indisposed, and his only heir, besides being confined due to illness, is rumored to have such a bad personality that he often hits his servants. Angie decides she's heard enough lies and confronts the girl, saying that Lord Killick isn't like that. Sometimes he can be a bit rude, but he cares about people. The gossiping girl grows curious and questions Angie about how she can be so sure of what she's saying. Has she perhaps met him in person? Angie realizes she's said too much. She remembers her mother asked her to keep her visits to the Lord a secret. Trying to cover it up, Angie says she only said that because what the redhead was saying didn't sound right, and that they should remember that thanks to the Duke, they all live a good life on the island. The gossiper then looks a bit embarrassed and agrees with Angie. Letitia agrees with Angie, saying she's right, and that they shouldn't judge the young master. She leans toward Angie, hugging her, and comments that this story about his face is truly uncomfortable. Angie then realizes that despite spending time with the Lord, she's never seen his face before, and has no idea what he looks like. She remembers the first time she met him and realizes that all she knows about his appearance is that he's tall and has a deep voice, and that despite his initially cold behavior, he has a subtle consideration for others. And regarding his face, she realizes she's never really thought much about it before. The only reason she feared him at the beginning was because she expected him to throw her out. But strangely, she can't get Letitia's words out of her mind. It doesn't take long for another meeting to come. However, she's informed that the boy has matters regarding his studies to handle. So unlike the other times, he might be late. Angie waits for him patiently, but that ends up making her a little drowsy. She stands up and starts walking around a bit to fight off the sleep. The girl looks through the window, realizing that this is the view Killick sees every day. Angie finds the outside beautiful and feels sad that the young master can only appreciate it from a distance. With nothing much to do, the girl sits on the floor, lost in thought, and despite not knowing how sick he really is, she thinks it would be nice if the two of them could walk together in the gardens. Some time passes, and Killick returns to the room. He notices that Angie has fallen asleep while waiting for him. Gently, he takes a blanket and places it over her shoulders. He pauses for a second, admiring Angie's beautiful and innocent face as she sleeps. Mesmerized, he brings his hand closer to her cheek, caressing her face tenderly as he watches her. But his gaze suddenly turns sad, and he seems to remember something that troubles him. Recalling a conversation he had earlier where Jerome Hamilton, the head butler of the house, reported that recently rumors have been spreading among the island's children, and it seems they started at the church. I believe we're talking about that redhead gossiper from earlier. Damn, this island is bizarre. The gossip just started and they already know everything. Kelek then assumes this means that Angie must believe he's some kind of terrible monster. But Jerome surprises him by saying that this isn't the case, because in fact, the girl has been quite protective of him, and that she was the only one to show such a reaction, refusing to believe the rumors and defending the young master. This leaves Kylek very surprised. The butler then continues, saying that if the rumors bother him, he can deal with it quickly. But the young master claims there's no need to worry about trivial matters and that, for now, he should just observe. Returning to the present moment, Kylek voices his admiration for Angie. While caressing her face, he comments that it's impressive how she has such a different mindset from the others. For some reason, that only makes him want to expect even more from her. Expect what? This poor narrator is curious. I sincerely hope he doesn't dare hurt our dear Angie. Kylek stops touching her and, while observing her, says her name, Angela Risdell, almost as if in a sigh. He leans closer to her and, whispering, says that he wants her for himself, that he wants her affection for himself. A small note at this moment. For this exact scene, there are two translations of his line. In one, he says, "I want you for myself," and in the other, he says he wants her to have what is his. I translated it in the way that made the most sense, but I think it's important you know about both versions. Angie, maybe because of his presence so close, or maybe because of his words, begins to wake up. Quickly, Kylek places his hands over her eyes and orders her to keep them closed. Angie obeys, though still a little confused, her heart beating fast as she thinks about how close Lord Kylek is to her. Kylek says that it would be better for her to return home since he will still be busy for a while. The girl agrees, although her mind is focused on the warm touch of Kylek's hand and the scent of roses that comes from him. Kylek adds that starting today, he would like her to come visit him 3 times a week. Angie is surprised by the request. For someone who didn't want visitors, this is almost a request for her to never leave. The young master says that he would like to hear her stories more often. Angie, still with her eyes closed, gives a beautiful smile, happy with Kylek's request, and asks him if she can really visit more often. This story is a bit reminiscent of 1001 Nights, when Scheherazade captivates the king by telling him stories each night. Cute, isn't it? Kylek is once again impressed by Angie's beauty and purity. Giving a slight smile, he confirms that she not only can, but should visit him more often. He lowers his hand and leans closer to her again, declaring that he will be waiting eagerly for her visits. The next day, at the small countryside house in the northern region of the island, which Angie's parents are responsible for taking care of, the family is busy doing household chores. Our protagonist tells us that sometimes she likes to go there when she wants to think. While hanging handkerchiefs on the clothesline, Angie tells us that this cottage is near the cliffs to the north of the island, and that, because of that, it is especially pleasant and cool in the summer. As soon as she finishes hanging the sheets, she notices something in the flower bed. She sees that the roses are already blooming, which also means that the harvest will begin soon. Around this time of year, the Blackwell house makes a powder from Bengal roses that they mix with water for the island residents to consume. She approaches the roses to smell them. The scent is heavenly, with a pleasant fragrance that isn't overwhelming. This makes her think of Kylek, when he said that he wanted her for himself. She is surprised to remember him, but she also reveals to us that, in fact, she heard what he said that day. Immediately, she blushes, wondering what could have made him say that. She starts thinking about her time with Kylek. The more time she spends at the mansion, the more curious she becomes about him. Then one day, she asks him if they can draw the bed curtains just a little. Kylek refuses her request without even thinking, which makes Angie realize that at times he can be very serious and strict, but he can also be very gentle and caring, Angie thinks, remembering the day Louise handed her several boxes of cookies at Lord Kylek's request after he noticed that she had liked them. Once, she decided that she wanted to know more about him and asked what his favorite food was. But Kylek thought the question was silly, and instead of answering, he just asked her to keep telling the story. Sometimes it feels like every time she tries to get a little closer, he distances himself, as if he has drawn an invisible line between them. Another day, Angie told the story of a princess who risked her life in battle. achieving victory by rescuing her father and making the king repent of his madness. That brought a smile to the Lord's face. With a small laugh, he told her that she had a talent for turning tragedies into comedies. And she remembers feeling happy and surprised that she had made Kilek smile. That was one of the few moments where she managed to catch Kilek off guard, without his defenses up. In those special moments, she often wondered what kind of expression he was making as he looked at her. Someday, she truly wishes she could see behind the veil, to see Kilek's expressions and his smile. Angie returns from her thoughts about Kilek. She has the impression she heard something, maybe a rabbit. Angie remembers that rumor about animals mysteriously dying throughout the forest. She approaches the bushes to check, but her mother calls her, asking if she has finished hanging the laundry. Angie replies yes as she runs back to the house. Without her noticing, hidden among the bushes, someone was watching her. Lord Kilek turns and leaves the place. The scene cuts to Angie in front of Kilek's mansion, at another time, thanking the coachman for the ride. Smiling and cheerful, she tells him that she will walk to the entrance since the weather is so pleasant today. The man says it's a good idea and even suggests she take a good look around the garden. She starts walking, and as she looks at the flowers she's carrying, she wonders if Kilek will like them. Angie notices that she has grown so used to visiting Lord Kilek that it feels like the first time she entered that mansion was years and years ago. The gentle touch of sunlight and the sweet aroma of flowers indicate that autumn will soon arrive. And so, time passes, leaving countless footprints behind. Angie knocks on the mansion door. She patiently waits for someone to answer, and it's clear that she has grown taller. She is greeted by the housekeeper. With a smile, Angie greets her. And so, almost without realizing it, the seasons kept changing and time kept passing, and we see Angie now, 18 years old. 3 years had gone by. During that time, which felt both long and fleeting, her relationship with Kilek went through many changes. The cherry blossoms bloom, marking the start of spring. Just as she is about to begin her story, Angie is surprised by Kilek asking her to call him Kai. Angie is startled and asks what he means. He confirms, saying that from that moment on, she should call him Kai. Blushing slightly and smiling happily, Angie agrees. Outside, the leaves of the trees now fall, signaling that autumn has returned. Angie finishes reading her story to Kilek and notices that night is falling. He then informs her that dinner has been prepared and asks her to eat before leaving. And he surprises her by saying that if she wants, she can have her meal right there. Angie comments that she loves the variety of fine teas they have there since usually she only gets to drink rose tea. Kilek says that's because he wants to give her an extra incentive to visit this place. Something tells me that's not the real reason, and that he thought for a moment about saying the real reason but chose not to. As the bond between Kilek and Angie grew stronger, she longed even more to see his face, even if just a small glimpse. Unlike Psyche, who used the candle to illuminate the face of the god Eros, she never had the courage nor the foolishness to take a look. And so, another winter arrives. Honestly, this humble narrator doesn't understand why he doesn't show his face to her. There's nothing wrong with his face. Maybe he just doesn't want her to ask questions. Kilek hears Angie coughing and comments on her catching another cold, as always during this time of year. Smiling, Angie says that it's not as bad this year and that it's just a slight cough. Kilek scolds her, reminding her that she said the same thing last year. He then asks if there's something she would like. She doesn't seem to understand why he's asking this, but Kilek explains that her birthday is coming up and that he'd like to give her a present. Angie finds this unusual because, remembering the last 3 years they spent together, he always surprised her with something without having to ask. Noticing Angie's silence, Kilek explains that since it will be her 18th birthday, he wants to give her something special to honor her coming of age. This leaves Angie quite surprised, and her reaction is seen by him through a mirror. Without realizing it, she has the feeling that he can read her thoughts as if he were looking directly at her face. She returns to thinking about his question. She doesn't know what to ask for after all. She's appreciated every gift she's received, so she's never had to think much about it. Then she thinks of something. Maybe this is the perfect moment to ask for something she never had the courage to say out loud. Angie is ready to speak, but a strange sound coming from Kai catches her attention. Immediately, she stands up, calling for him. She tries to approach, worried, while Kilek coughs uncontrollably. Noticing her approach, still coughing, Kilek orders her not to come closer. She stops, obeying him, but still a bit hesitant. Looking very weak while coughing up blood, Kilek asks her to stay where she is. At that moment, the household staff rush in to assist the young master. Louise goes to Angie and begins to forcefully pull her out of the room. Kilek continues coughing, and the 2 men who entered the room with the housekeeper disappear behind the curtains to help him. Angie, deep in thought, knows that if she could have one single wish from him, it would be to have permission to cross the line that separates them so she could run into his arms and hold him tight. The scene cuts to the island's church. The priest's prayers echo throughout the church as the villagers pray fervently. I make known to you the gospel that I preached to you. If you hold firmly to the word I preached, you will not have believed in vain. And through this gospel, you will be saved. The priest's words. Angie is also in the church. Like the others, she prays with devotion. She pauses her prayer for a moment, wondering if Lord Kylek is all right. She coughs a little, and that makes her think that her cold must be nothing compared to the pain Kai must be feeling. Angie tells us that over the years, this has happened on several occasions, but this time things seemed much more serious. She resumes her prayer, asking that Kylek be well and stay safe, hoping her prayer reaches the heavens and that God hears her pleas. Angie then leaves the church, and immediately she notices something strange happening. She sees some hooded figures whispering, and she wonders who those people could be. Whoever they are, they seem to be dealing with something very serious and important. She scolds herself for getting involved where she wasn't called. After all, it's late, and her parents must be waiting for her at home. As soon as she gets home, her mother tells her that she received a letter from the Blackwell house. Without wasting time, she rushes to get it. She's curious to know the contents of the letter. Upon opening it, she realizes the letter is from Kylek. He wrote to her, worried that she had been frightened by what happened that afternoon. And although he wanted to speak to her in person, he knows his condition doesn't allow it, so he decided to write. He says that unfortunately, in the coming days, he will have to undergo treatment. But even so, he wants to know what she wishes for as a gift, because he would like to give her one. And that he hopes that as soon as he recovers and returns to his room, she will be the first person he sees when he returns. Angie holds the letter tightly, saying that seeing him care for her in this way, even while suffering, makes it impossible for her not to believe that maybe he feels the same way about her as she does for him. Meanwhile, in the mansion, Kylek is reading a book when Louise approaches, saying that he urgently needs a blood transfusion from his remedy. Without taking his eyes off the book, Kylek replies that he will not receive any transfusion. Reluctantly, Louise begins to try to argue with him. With an irritated look, Kylek glares at the housekeeper, warning her not to make him repeat himself. He slams the book shut in anger, clenching his fists, and reminds Louise that he will never harm even a single hair on Angie's head. In a reply letter, Angie expresses her relief at having received news from him and wishes that his treatment is going well. She says that no matter how long it takes, she will be waiting to greet him when he returns to his chambers. The girl also writes that there is nothing she wants as a gift but admits she has a wish, something he could grant, though she doesn't know if he will be willing. All she says is that her wish is to be able to see his face. That almost leaves the young man breathless. The girl has no idea of the thoughts that go through his mind every time he sees her, especially when she gives him a genuine smile, so different from the other remedies, when she speaks her mind without letting herself be influenced by what others think, and when she rejects the eternal life that so many others desire, embracing the value of a mortal life. Kylek is enchanted, as if struck by some mystical force. That, dear readers, is called love. The male lead is in love with our dear protagonist. Every detail of Angie fascinates him, from her small, pale hands, her silky blonde hair that looks like strands of gold, her large, bright emerald eyes, and her cheeks that turn red whenever she feels shy. Angie has no idea how hard it is for Kylek to restrain himself around her, especially when he sees her beautiful, rosy lips. Kylek wonders if, when she discovers his secrets, she will still choose to stay by his side. The scene shifts to Angie at her house. She compliments her mother's strawberry pie, saying that she always makes the best desserts. Worried, her mother says that since she still can't get rid of her cold, she should at least eat her favorite foods. Angie doesn't waste any time and fills her mouth with the delicious treats prepared by her mother. She also offers her some honey water to help with the cough. Lamenting that her daughter suffers so much during the winters, her father comments that as soon as she feels better, she should go back to drinking rose tea. Her mother mentions that rose tea is good for health, and that's why everyone on the island drinks it often. She then comments that she heard her daughter has been teaching the chapel children to sing. Angie says she did it at Letitia's request and that the children are adorable little birds. Her mother asks what songs she's been teaching the children, and Angie explains that she's been teaching children songs that Letitia prepared, but that Letitia would like her to create something of her own next time. So she has been thinking about that. Angie says that maybe she could teach songs about the sea or the night. Thinking about it, a melody suddenly comes to her mind, and that makes her think of something. She hums the melody and asks her mother if she used to sing that to her, but her parents don't recognize the melody. They ask if she's sure it was one of them who sang it, but Angie doesn't know. It just appeared in her head out of nowhere. Finding it strange, she becomes curious about how she knows that melody. They finish eating, and her mother comments that since it's so late, they should go to bed. She caresses Angie's face, happy that the next day will be her birthday, and promises to cook something extra special to celebrate. So they say goodnight to each other. Angie begins her preparations, blowing out the candles, and soon sits on her huge bed, big enough for her entire family. She lies down to sleep and thinks again about the melody. She can't remember anyone ever singing it to her. It doesn't take long for the girl to fall asleep. Almost as if carried by the wind, the melody begins to play. As the sun sets over the sea, kissed by rain and wind, stars silently shimmer. Suddenly, she's no longer in her room, but in a field full of flowers. She hears someone's voice in the distance and turns to look. The person asks if she can hear him, and then if she can see him. Angie is curious to know who that is. The stranger asks if she can't hear him, and begs her to say something. But what surprises her the most is when he asks if she also knows the song. He pleads for her to answer him. The stranger starts running toward her, trying to say the name of the song, but his voice is cut off. He tries to touch her while saying her name, but as soon as he touches her shoulder, she wakes up from the dream. When the day breaks, sunlight floods the room. Angie wakes up thinking about the dream, which was so vivid and strange. That man, who was he? And why did he feel so real? Her mother knocks on the door, wanting to know if she's awake. Angie quickly answers that she is. Her mother then tells her to come to the living room because several presents have arrived for her. She adds that a gift from the Blackwell house has just arrived as well. Angie holds the delicate box, curious to know what it is, accompanied by a handwritten letter from Lord Kylek. She takes the letter in her hands, anxious, her heart racing with anticipation. Kylek congratulates her, regretting not being able to deliver the gift in person. The young man also wishes her a happy day and that it lasts for the rest of her life. The young master says he's doing his best to recover and asks her to wait just 10 more days, and then he will be able to give her the real gift. He says that as an apology, he's sending a snow globe along with the letter, something so she can enjoy the snow she loves to watch during any season of the year. Angie is very impressed with the gift and comments that it looks like a scene straight out of a fairy tale, thinking that this year Kylek overdid it by sending her so many gifts when just one of them would have already been enough for her. She wonders if the real gift he mentioned in the letter means that she will finally be able to see his face. Her mother approaches, admiring the snow globe. She comments that it's the first time Lord Kylek has ever sent her daughter a birthday present, and that makes her happy, thinking that it must mean he has really opened up to Angie. Angie confesses to us that she felt embarrassed by the gifts she received in previous years, and, because of that, hid them from her parents. Then her mother notices something curious, that Angie's and Kylek's birthdays are only one day apart. Angie asks if her mother is sure about that because she didn't know Kylek's birthday was so close to hers. But her mother confirms that Kylek's birthday is tomorrow. Angie remembers how many times she asked about it, but he never told her the day, and she regrets not knowing during the 3 years they've been together. Her mother takes her hand. She explains to her daughter that it doesn't make a difference since the Duke of Blackwell and Lord Kylek prefer to let their birthdays pass in silence. Angie asks why, and her mother says that the Blackwells hate exaggerated and extravagant celebrations. Her mother asks her to pretend she never heard this during her next visit. Angie wonders how she can do that since, to her, birthdays are special occasions. She asks what kind of illness Kylek has. She admits that her heart aches knowing that he is unable to experience even the simplest joys of life. Angie admits that she worries too much about him and that he never leaves her thoughts. Concerned, her mother says that she must never express such thoughts in front of other people. Because the Blackwell family is not a family like theirs, there is a huge difference. This means that they carry a heavy burden for the good of everyone, and it is not the right of ordinary people like them to make that burden even heavier. Angie feels saddened hearing that. Her mother then says that if it truly worries her, she should say a prayer for Lord Kylek that night. In a new letter, Angie tells her beloved that she had a wonderful birthday celebration, that she received many gifts, but the one she loved the most was the snow globe he gave her. Once again, she thanks him for the gift, and admits that she misses him. She wonders if, once his round of treatment is finished and his health is better, she will finally be able to see his smile. Blowing out her birthday candle, she wonders if she can dare to wish for that. Clearly, the two are in love. They just need a little push for things to happen. At night, in the town church, Angie prays for Kylek's health and happiness. Anxiously, she remembers that she only needs to wait 4 more days until she can see Kylek. As she leaves the chapel, she hears whispers. Accidentally, she overhears voices talking about a blood transfusion and how not receiving one so far could be dangerous, but that a transfusion could risk losing the remedy. Angie listens, curious, without fully understanding what they are talking about. Finally, the voice says they will talk to Mrs. Dunst because this goes against the teachings. The voices fade, and Angie leaves the church. The words of those people still bother her when something catches her attention. A hooded man. And seeing him, she has the impression that she's seen him before. The stranger then turns and sees her. And right after, he starts walking toward her. This makes her feel uneasy. Greeting her with a casual hello, the man says he has the impression they've met before. Removing his hood, revealing a handsome blonde, he asks her if she remembers him. Seeing the girl nervous, he assumes that maybe he's mistaken. Stammering in surprise, Angie says that she's seen him. The young man explains that he's there to help his aunt, who works as a caretaker at the chapel, and Angie comments that his aunt must be Hester. This makes Angie assume that the two hooded people she overheard talking earlier must have been him and Hester. She remembers that her mother once told her that Hester's older sister died of an illness a long time ago, and that Hester had to take care of her sister's son, but that he was born with a delicate condition, and when he was little, could rarely leave the house. Angie remembers her mentioning that he had albinism. She wonders if that's why his eyes are purple, and also thinks that maybe he has been in a situation similar to Kai's. The man then asks if she still doesn't trust him. With his irresistible charm, he says that he'd like to walk her home since it's so late and the night so dark. In the middle of a cough, Angie manages to politely refuse, saying it's fine and that she's used to the path. Then she quickly says goodbye to the stranger. He watches her leave, a little saddened that he didn't even have the chance to properly introduce himself. Back at her house, Angie is lying on her bed, sleeping peacefully. Once again, in her dream, she is taken to that field. A voice calls out to her. It's that young man once again in her dream. You know those dreams where we can't manage to say a single word? Poor Angie can't manage it in hers either. Suddenly, flames appear in the place. I believe this might be some kind of warning or a way to stop the two from meeting. Poor Angie grows worried with all that fire and wonders where it could be coming from. But the young man doesn't give up. Even with the flames, he tries to get closer, but realizing he won't be able to, he yells for her not to forget him, saying his name is Martin Silva and that they will meet again. Angie wakes up from this dream, very startled. She sits up in bed, slightly out of breath. Then a scream outside the house catches her attention. The scream she hears sounds exactly like the one from her dream. Wanting to solve this mystery, she ends up leaving in the middle of the night. Once outside, the girl walks in the direction where she believes the sound came from. Out of nowhere, she feels something rush past her quickly from behind. She looks around, worried, thinking that maybe it could be a wild animal. Sensing something behind her, she turns and sees something glowing red between the trees. Startled, she falls to the ground, dropping her lantern. Trembling in fear, she realizes that whatever it is, it's staring at her. Quickly, she feels around the ground, trying to recover the lantern. When she lights up the area in front of her, she realizes that the large shadow among the trees is moving toward her. In panic, she just watches, unable to move. And before her eyes, a handsome man in blood-stained clothes appears. The two lock eyes for a second. Kalek is as surprised as she is. But our poor protagonist, still terrified and not recognizing the man in front of her, trembles and breathes heavily in total panic. She starts to feel dizzy, her vision blurring as she loses consciousness. Before her body hits the ground, Kalek catches her in his arms. He sighs, slightly frustrated. With her in his arms, he asks how he's supposed to give her her birthday present now. Kalek looks up at the sky, concluding from the silence in the forest that his father has probably finally satisfied his thirst. Kalek doesn't understand how Angie ended up there, but knows that place is dangerous, both the forest and the entrance of the island. He whispers to Angie to wait a little longer, until he's strong enough to protect her, promising to break the curse with his own hands. It doesn't take long for morning to arrive. Already up, doing her chores, Angie's mother is deep in thought, wondering what to make for breakfast. Angie walks into the kitchen, calling for her. Confused, she asks her mother how she got home the night before. The woman looks puzzled, and Angie asks if she doesn't know that she left the house in the middle of the night. With breakfast already prepared, Mrs. Risdell says she's worried because she has no idea what her daughter is talking about. She also says that neither she nor Angie's father heard anything. Her mother explains to her that if there had been such strange screams in the forest, one of them would have woken up. She asks her daughter to think rationally about all of this. If she really had gone into the forest, her boots would be muddy. Besides, until recently, the door had been locked. Mrs. Risdell says she also went into her daughter's room around dawn and found her sleeping peacefully. Her mother says she must have simply had a nightmare and asks her to put those silly thoughts aside. But Angie still feels that something is off. She wonders how all of that could have just been a dream. She saw it with her own eyes. Last night, there was someone in the forest, a man of extreme beauty. Besides that, she clearly remembers the vivid dream she had. She dreamed of a man running through the fields while saying his name. Martin Silva, she murmurs. Her mother hears her whisper and asks if she said something, but she denies it. Angie knows that if she tells her mother about it, she'll find it even stranger. She decides that the best thing to do is investigate on her own and look for any sign of a Martin Silva. Meanwhile, her mother asks her to eat a little more fruit. The woman suggests she drink rose tea since her cough has improved, but Angie prefers honey tea until she's fully recovered. Despite her suspicious reaction, Mrs. Risdell just agrees. That's right, dear Angie. Don't drink that suspicious tea. There's definitely something going on with it. Her mother comments that she's heard Kylek is improving a lot and should be much better soon. This makes Angie very happy, and her mother adds that apparently the new medication is almost finished. Innocently, Angie believes that her prayers have been heard. She is anxious, and all she wants is to be able to talk to Kai again as soon as possible, even if it means just hearing his voice. Then, some more time passes. Angie is inside the carriage. In the meantime, she remembers how she ended up there. A young man went to her house and explained to Mr. and Mrs. Risdell about a complete cleaning in the mansion, but that some staff members stayed behind. They urgently needed more people, so he had been sent to fetch Angie to help. While the man is talking to Angie's parents, he holds a note hidden behind his back, and Angie quickly notices that he's trying to hand it to her secretly. He keeps explaining to Angie's parents while she opens the note. She instantly recognizes Kylek's handwriting. In the note, he says he would like to give her the birthday present that night, and that he sent Zachary to bring her to the meeting point, telling her parents that she would be helping with the mansion's cleaning. Angie is thrilled with Kylek's message. Oh, I'm nervous. Will she remember that she saw him in the forest? Zachary calls her attention, asking if it's really okay for her to go. Hiding the note, Angie agrees, saying she's happy to help. That's how she ended up in the Blackwell carriage. The fact that she lied to her parents bothers her, but she knows this is the only way to see Kai. The greenhouse, known as the Blackwell's Sacred Sanctuary. They say it was lovingly built by the Duke for Lady Eugenia, which feels like an ironic act of love, considering it seems the Duke ended the Duchess's life. Angie enters the greenhouse with confidence, knowing that tonight, in such an important place for the Blackwells, she will finally see the face of her beloved Kylek. At first, she's a bit hesitant and nervous. Despite her anxiety, his silhouette makes her notice something. She thinks it can't be true. But when Lord Kylek finally turns around, she is certain that he is the man she saw in the forest. Our protagonist is far too sharp. I'm impressed. I just pray she listens to what he has to say without assuming anything on her own, and that he explains what the hell is going on. Kylek walks toward Angie, and the two exchange glances for a few seconds. He greets her, and when she hears his voice, she recognizes it instantly, leaving her completely astonished. In disbelief, she tries to confirm by calling him by the name Kai, and the boy smiles, confirming that it's him. He steps even closer, and while she's still emotional, all she manages to say is, "How?" Finally, she asks if he is the person she met in the forest. Kylek confirms that yes, and explains that she passed out from the shock, so he carried her back to her home. "It seems you remember everything that happened then," he says, stepping even closer, his face near hers. Angie says that her mother tried to convince her that it was all just a dream, because there were no signs of her leaving. Kylek explains that he got rid of all the evidence because he didn't want her parents to worry. He asks what she was doing in the forest. She answers that she heard a noise and decided to check it out. She asks if he went to the forest for the same reason. Kylek hesitates a bit. He answers that he also woke up because of a strange scream, but he says that the noise was due to a problem with the wind sights, but that he only learned about it the next day when Jerome informed him. Oh, for the love of God, what a flimsy excuse. I'm so frustrated that he won't tell her the truth. I'm an anxious person. Kylek says that what's strange is that she was the only person who went out to investigate. Meanwhile, Angie is lost in thought, questioning if the noise really came from the wind sights, because that scream definitely sounded human. But she is pulled out of her thoughts when Kai touches her face. This makes Angie a bit anxious and flustered by the warmth of Kai's hand. With a charming smile, he asks if she liked his birthday present. Up until this moment, Angie had imagined countless times what he might look like, and the rumors made her a bit anxious, but she knew they couldn't be true. However, never in her wildest imagination did she think he would have such a striking and handsome face. Kylek asks if she would mind if he got a little closer. He steps closer, gently taking her hand, and tells her that she can push him away at any time if she feels uncomfortable. In a tender and loving way, he says that he will always respect her wishes. Both his closeness and his words make Angie blush even more. Kylek caresses her face with tenderness, while Angie's mind and heart are overwhelmed by the powerful and captivating presence of Kylek. He leans in to kiss her, and she closes her eyes, accepting him. In that beautiful sanctuary in the middle of the night, they kiss intensely. As she is kissed, Angie feels as if her heart is about to burst from her chest. Even his breath is sweet. She feels the ecstasy hitting her like a wave. Their lips part, but the intensity of the moment leaves them both slightly breathless. Angie's mind is clouded, mesmerized. Even though she had only imagined something like this in her dreams, she knows this is definitely not a dream. Despite the overwhelming feeling, she still can't fully believe what just happened. She has finally touched and kissed her beloved Kai, the person her heart had longed for so much, the sole heir of the Blackwell house. Thinking about this, Angie realizes something and tenses up a bit. Noticing her distraction, Kylek asks if she's all right. Rejecting his touch, Angie replies that she's not. Kylek is surprised and concerned at the same time. Pulling back, he asks if he did something she didn't want, but she explains that's not it, that she also wanted to touch him, to kiss him. But the problem is that she and he are very different. And remembering what her mother once told her, she explains that they come from different worlds, leaving the Lord quite surprised by that thought. Kai says that if that's the reason, she shouldn't worry. He reaches out his hand toward her, telling her she should know how precious she is to him. In a passionate gesture, he gently kisses her hand. Meanwhile, in the dungeons, Edward, the Duke, imprisoned in a cell, tells Jerome how precious the boy is. And that's why he wishes for him to live the rest of his life in peace, completely healthy and safe. Jerome just listens in silence. The man sitting on the ground says that this is the only thing he desires. He tells Jerome to use any means necessary to ensure that, even if it requires sorcery, or even a remedy, he must save Kylek, no matter what the cost. Back to the couple, Kylek asks if she truly has no idea how precious she is to him. His heart is open to Angie, but if she doesn't feel the same for him, he will step back and respect her wishes. Angie panics when she hears that and grabs Kylek's hand, which was pulling away from hers. She confesses that she feels the same about him, and that she has been waiting for this moment for a long time, that she even prayed every night, visualizing the moment when they would finally be face to face. Angie says she longed for the day when she could speak to him while looking into his eyes, but she admits she comes from a humble background, and because of that, she's unsure if they should get closer. Really, Angie? After everything, you're hesitating now? Don't do this, girl. Be bold. Kylek hesitates for a moment, then reveals that his mother was the daughter of his father's piano tutor, leaving Angie shocked by this revelation. After all, she had always believed that Lady Eugenia came from a family of status equal to the Blackwells. Kneeling, Kylek says that being an heir should not represent any problem for their relationship. He says he wants to hear an answer that comes from her heart. Angie isn't oblivious to what he means, because she can feel her heart pounding uncontrollably. I don't think she's confused about love. It's just something so new to her. She moves closer to him. Then she says once again that she feels the same for him. Determined to be brave and true to her feelings, Kylek embraces her, deeply moved by her answer. And so, the two declare their love for each other in that sanctuary. You can feel their overwhelming emotions. However, someone else doesn't seem happy about this. It's that blonde man who always appears in Angie's dreams. He screams no as he watches their confession. Somewhere far away on the island, in a room, a blonde young man wakes up, disoriented. Once again, he saw the girl in his dream. The same blonde girl from his previous dreams, just like he saw the boy she was with. Lord Kylek Blackwell. He knows this because the young man said his own name. All of this is very strange to him. The fact that a girl he has never seen before materializes in his dreams, along with the strange things happening on Cullinan Island. The newspaper carries a headline about the imperial family recognizing Keelam as the official religion, and about strange events occurring on Cullinan Island. The blonde man wonders what he should do, since he isn't sure if what he saw in his dream is real. All of this is driving him crazy, but at the same time, he wonders if this could really be just a coincidence. Looking at himself in the mirror, he thinks that maybe, instead of coincidence, all of this is fate, and that he shouldn't ignore it. Meanwhile, in the Cullinan Island library, Angie reflects on the events of the previous night. Kylek had told her that he would need to continue his treatment for a while longer because the development of the new remedy was still in the testing phase. This leaves Angie uneasy. Lord Kylek said they wouldn't be able to see each other again for some time and asked if she would be okay. Angie agreed. After all, her wish was still for Kai to get better. She repeats that last part out loud as she reminisces. Looking around, she hopes no one heard what she just said out loud. Kylek had also said that the treatment wouldn't last too long and that she just needed to be patient. She tries to calm herself down, reminding herself not to get anxious. A good way to keep her mind occupied is to stay focused on unraveling the real mystery about Martin Silva. Angie analyzes her book with birthdays and dates, but his name isn't listed anywhere. But she doesn't think it was just her imagination. Since she has the feeling that her dreams are connected, she thought it must be someone who lives on the island. Unable to find an answer, she closes the book. The girl decides she needs to dig deeper, thinking the name might be in older resident records. Without wasting time, Angie goes to investigate. But the clerk at the registry tells her that no one is registered with that name, and that it doesn't sound familiar at all. He even offers her the list with the names of all the people who have lived on the island in the last 20 years. Angie knows he's right, as there isn't a single Martin Silva listed in the book. She wonders if it's possible for someone she's never seen before to appear in her dreams. Having no idea if he really exists or not, she even suspects that he might be some sort of ghost. And that thought grabs her attention, so she tries again. This time, Angie asks if there has ever been a resident who met a bad end while trying to escape the island. This leaves the man intrigued by her question, and the girl specifies, saying it could have been similar to what happened to Elliot. Despite the odd question, he thinks for a moment. The man says that as far as he knows, nothing like that ever happened. He suggests she take a look at the death records. At that moment, someone calls out to her, surprised that Angie is still there. It's Letitia, who also greets Myle, and here you can clearly see how much her character has grown. The girl grabs Angie, telling her to come join her for some embroidery. So they leave the place, leaving Myle to his work. Having been interrupted, Angie decides to leave her search for another time, hoping that she will dream of the person again and get more clues. The girls are gathered outside the building where the meeting takes place. Letitia starts to get suspicious and says that Angie seems a little different. Nervous, Angie tries to hide it, but nothing convinces the girl. Letitia says she looks prettier, surprising Angie. The girl keeps teasing her, asking what her secret is to looking so perfect that day. She tries another angle and asks if Angie is seeing someone and hasn't told her. Even though Angie denies it, we all know the truth. Angie blushes slightly, remembering that moment with her beloved Kylek. Her mind immediately goes to that intense kiss between them, and Angie bursts with embarrassment, turning redder than a tomato. Letitia doesn't fail to notice how flustered she becomes when pressed. Luckily for Angie, the other girls show up. They arrive happily, saying it's time to gather in the sewing room. Angie agrees, relieved that the questioning has ended, but then notices something strange. One girl from the group is missing. When she asks about her whereabouts, the others look confused, denying that anyone is missing. Angie insists, saying she's sure there was another member in the embroidery circle. She even gives a description. A tall, red-haired, very talkative girl. Yikes. Looks like they got rid of the gossiping redhead. Probably Jerome. Poor girl, we didn't even find out her name. Laughing, the girls ask if she's imagining things or confusing reality with book characters. Angie sticks to her claim with certainty, not even realizing that someone is watching their conversation. One of the girls then remembers that months ago, Angie said she had heard a strange echo in the middle of the night and refuses to fall for what she thinks are illusions again. Hester appears, interrupting the girls' conversation. She asks if everyone who's supposed to embroider is there and if they're all present. Looking at Angie, she notices that the girl is behaving oddly. The woman tells them to go home, making the atmosphere a bit tense. Hester is questioned about the reason, and she starts to explain when several hooded men begin to appear, running toward the church. They enter the building, and the girls watch everything in confusion. Then Hester explains that this morning, Duke Blackwell passed away. Back in that dungeon, Jerome watches the man's body. He turns to see who is approaching. It's the young master, Kylek. He stares at his late father, kneels beside him, and finds it strange that even though his father has died, he feels nothing, as if his father was never truly alive. Perhaps his father felt the same after his mother passed away. She was his remedy, his only original sin, and the only person he truly loved. The young master is struck by that thought. After his mother's death, his father surrendered to madness, accepting any available blood transfusion, and ultimately met this tragic end. He wonders what his own fate will be. Kylek wonders if he will be able to break the curse and take real control of his life, or if he will succumb. Later that night, it's raining heavily. Angie is at home, reflecting on what happened. She had hoped the Duke would live a little longer. The girl still can't believe that the man is truly gone. Angie had heard that his condition had worsened, but never expected that he would die so suddenly. Either way, she hopes that Kai is okay. She worries that he might be trying to deal with overwhelming pain alone, but she doesn't have time to think much about it, because one of her parents knocks on the door, asking to come in. Mrs. Risdell informs her that her husband went out to help with the funeral preparations. The woman also reveals that she was told they would need her daughter's help as well. She explains that it will take a few days for everything to be in order, and during that time, they will need Angie's help with various tasks, just like the last time. This makes the girl wonder if this means she will be able to see Kai, or if this is his way of summoning her again. Noticing her daughter acting strangely, Mrs. Risdell takes her hands and kneels in front of her. The woman says there's nothing for her to worry about, because even though Duke Edward is no longer there, they now have a new Duke, Kylek Blackwell. And as always, they will continue living lives with purpose, under the grace of the Blackwell house. Still, that doesn't seem to ease her mind. Her mother asks if she understands that clearly. Angie nods and asks if everything will really be okay, because Kylek is undergoing treatment, but she doesn't know if he will ever be cured. Then Mrs. Risdell says that if his condition doesn't improve, he may need additional treatment outside the island. This surprises Angie, since they can't leave. After all, as far as she knows, the area is infested with sharks, and there are still traces of poisonous gases scattered across the continent. Her mother agrees and asks her to listen carefully to what she's about to say. Mrs. Risdell says she doesn't know all the details, but 2 or 3 times a year, the young sharks migrate. And during that time, the full moon shifts from its usual orbit and turns red, which is when it becomes possible to navigate by boat across the sea. With that knowledge, the late Duke sailed to the continent in search of medicine 8 years ago. However, he lost his companions in a storm and was forced to return before a week had passed. And because of that, he never told anyone about the crossing. If he had, it might have led people to make dangerous attempts to leave the island. Mrs. Risdell says that without understanding the lunar cycle, they could end up like Elliot, though we know that's not quite what really happened. Angie asks an interesting question. She wonders if that means the continent is actually a safe place, unlike what they've been led to believe. But her mother denies it, saying the Duke was simply desperate to obtain medicine. The woman stands up and asks her daughter not to let any foolish thoughts cross her mind, and that she must never speak of what she just learned. Angie has another question. She wants to know when the next lunar cycle will happen again. Mrs. Risdell doesn't know, saying that's something probably only the older staff of the Blackwell house are aware of. The woman asks her to pack her things, since she'll be heading to the mansion after the funeral. Then she leaves Angie alone in her room. Angie thinks about how the idea of leaving the island had never even crossed her mind before. She feels anxious thinking of it as a possibility. The moment of Duke Edward's farewell arrives, with prayers wishing that he rests in peace and that the Lord blesses them with renewal and resurrection. Angie stands beside her mother. The girl seems to be looking for something, and Mrs. Risdell asks her to stay there before stepping away to join the others. Angie thinks that Kai probably won't attend the funeral. After all, he's never appeared in front of people before. But someone approaching catches her attention. There's someone beside her. She wonders if it could really be him. So Angie calls out to Kai. The man just turns around, making her question if he actually heard her. Then the young man signals for her to stay quiet. He approaches, startling the girl, who wants to know who he is. The man reveals himself, saying it's been a while since they last saw each other. Angie is very surprised to see the albino there, not to mention that he looks completely different from when she saw him outside the church. So much so that for a moment she thought he was Kai. The young man says she doesn't look as surprised as he thought she would, since he figured she would be caught off guard by the fact that he knows her name. He reveals that he's heard a lot about her and can describe everything about her. Angie asks him to just call her by her nickname instead of Angela. He introduces himself as Myle Randall and asks her to call him that instead of the young lord's name. Meanwhile, at the Blackwell mansion, there are a few people gathered inside, but Angie prefers to stay away from it. Someone asks what she's doing outside, catching the girl completely off guard. Angie explains that she just wanted to get some air, and Myle agrees that the atmosphere inside feels heavy. Curious, the girl looks at him. She then says that she heard he suffered from a long illness. Myle laughs, saying that's unexpected since he thought she had no interest in him. He explains that it hasn't been long since he recovered and joined the outside world, saying that sometimes the air he breathes feels unreal, just like it's hard to believe that the Duke has passed away. Angie wishes that he won't suffer anymore. She says that, knowing he endured so much pain for so long, she hopes that from now on, he can be happy. Myle thanks her for those kind words. The young man says he will be helping at the mansion and that it's comforting to have her there. Angie says she doesn't know much about the tasks there, and he says he's sure she's more capable than she thinks. She thinks about the moment she mistook him for Kai and realizes that they are completely different. Kai is like a dark chess piece, while Myle embodies the light of ivory. Pulling her out of her thoughts, the young man asks if she would like to take a walk, which she quickly accepts. The two walk side by side. As she is about to go down the stairs, Angie ends up stumbling over her shoes. This throws her off balance, sending her into a panic as she realizes she's about to fall. But Myle reacts quickly. He catches the girl before the accident. Holding her in his arms, Myle asks if she's okay. Angie thanks him as she steps away. At that moment, the young man notices something. He asks about the marks he noticed on her, but she's confused and Myle asks her to look at her arms. Angie doesn't know what those marks are and assumes she got dirty, but by the way they look, only someone with the same marks would recognize them. Myle says that, looking more closely, they seem to have been made by a needle, like the thousands scattered across his own body. Looking at her marks, Angie realizes they do look similar. The problem is that she's never needed an injection before, so she wonders how she could have gotten them. Myle asks for permission to take a closer look, and the girl agrees. Without realizing it, the two are being watched. Jerome calls for his master. Kylek asks how long his beloved will be staying there. He's informed it will be around 10 days. The young master thinks about asking about the man, but ends up letting it go. He knows it will take more time to adjust, because the future holds many changes. Night falls at the Blackwell mansion. A maid explains to Angie that, for now, all they need to do is clean the library or do some embroidery. Annette, who has become a close friend, asks if she'd like to have breakfast together the next morning, and Angie agrees. The two say their goodnights so they can get some rest. Finally, Angie is alone in her room. She didn't expect to have one just for herself. The girl thinks that she probably won't see her beloved that night, even though the young master sent a note saying he would try to visit her. It's been a long day for her. First, they laid someone to rest forever. Then, she met someone new. Angie also still hasn't figured out how she got those strange marks. If they really are from some kind of needle, she wants to understand why she doesn't remember, planning to ask her mother when she returns home. At least her cold has gotten better, so she considers going back to drinking rose tea. By now, it's pretty obvious that this tea is some way of controlling the island's residents. When Angie goes to sleep, she returns to that dream. In it, she turns toward that young man who is calling her name. Martin asks if she can hear him. There's something strange about this dream because she doesn't remember ever telling him her name. Desperate, the young man says that if she can hear him, she should respond, even just by nodding her head. Martin asks if she lives on Cullinan Island, and Angie still can't speak. So the girl does as he said and nods. He asks Angie to listen carefully. Martin says that the roses that grow there contain traces of drugs and that she must not drink them. If she follows this, she will slowly begin to recover her memory. He asks her to try to remember who she was before she came to Cullinan Island. Martin says that she will regain her true identity. Angie wakes up after that revelation. They were just a step away from touching each other. But then someone touches Angie's hand. The person asks if she had a nightmare. It's Kylek, who is by her side. Gently stroking her head, he says that she started sweating cold. Still a little dazed from sleep, Angie calls his name. Kai confirms that it's him there. Angie asks when he got in. He first apologizes for entering the room without her permission and explains that he didn't expect her to have already fallen asleep. The young master says that despite sending that note about meeting, he had many things to take care of, revealing that he only planned to stop by for a moment to look at her beautiful face. Kai asks if he scared her, and Angie shakes her head, saying no. The girl is still shaken by the dream about Martin mentioning the roses, so she thinks about pushing forward with her investigation, but right now she has Kai there with her. Angie says that, actually, her beloved ended up calming her, just waking up and having him there by her side. Angie regrets that it's so dark and hurries to light a candle, but Kai stops her, saying it's fine as it is. After all, he will have to leave soon. Kissing her hand tenderly, the Lord says that he will stay just a little longer. Angie asks if he's really okay. She says she's worried about him because he must be exhausted, both physically and mentally. But what she doesn't know is that what troubles his mind is her new friend. Obviously, Kai doesn't mention that. He says he's fine. The young master says that nothing could be bad when you have someone who cares so much about you. Kylek touches her face, leaving the girl almost breathless. He says that when his treatment is complete, there's something he wants to talk to her about. Kai leans closer and reveals that this conversation is about their future. Another day dawns on Cullinan Island. Angie is pouring herself some tea, but that's not what's on her mind. Touching her lips, she thinks about how well Kai kisses. She even loses track of time and wonders just how good he might be at other things. Angie's cheeks turn bright red, and she scolds herself for thinking such things. Either way, she's relieved that his treatment seems to be going well, but she wonders what he wants to discuss with her. Kai mentioned their future, and only one thing comes to her mind. Distracted, her tea overflows. The liquid is too hot, but at least it reminds her of something. Martin's warning not to drink the rose tea if she wants to remember who she really is. That revelation still worries Angie. Thinking back, her dreams of Martin started when she had to switch from honey tea after catching a cold. She's starting to think this isn't just a coincidence. Angie thinks she shouldn't trust him blindly without proof, but she knows it certainly won't hurt to stop drinking the tea. Someone knocks on her door asking if she's ready, and the girl answers yes. She leaves the place, leaving the tea untouched. Days pass, and at first Angie is nervous about deceiving everyone, but over time her worries fade, because she wants to be brave if it means uncovering the truth. And because she believes there's hope at the end of the long wait, Angie completes her 10 days at the mansion. Leaving there at night, the memories she had forgotten start to surface. Then she remembers the tall, red-haired girl. Her name is Lucy Perron. The two of them used to do embroidery together, but none of the other girls remember her, as if their memories had been completely wiped. Angie feels like someone suddenly erased every trace of Lucy's existence. Finally, she arrives home and is greeted by Mrs. Risdell. Her mother says she must be exhausted from all the hard work she did at the mansion, but Angie seems a bit distracted, which makes her mother call her attention. The woman asks why she looks so pale. She also comments that her daughter's face looks thinner and that she even has dark circles. Mrs. Risdell says that even her hair is falling out. Angie calls her mother. "I have some suspicion about this woman." She says that something has been happening to her lately. The girl talks about her dream with the same man who always tells her to leave the island. Mrs. Risdell desperately asks what her daughter is talking about. Explaining further, Angie says that at first it just seemed like a dream, but over time she began to have the strange feeling that he was telling the truth. Angie asks if it's possible that they don't actually know much about the survivors of the war or the current state of the continent, which might even be safe. Mrs. Risdell listens to everything in silence, then says that she'll have to take her to Dr. Johnson first thing the next morning. Angie tries to explain that she's not sick, but her mother yells at her to get those absurd thoughts out of her mind. The woman claims that her daughter's fantasy books have made it hard for her to tell the difference between fantasy and reality. She advises Angie to stop reading and to focus on her embroidery, and she seriously asks if the girl understands her. Mrs. Risdell's behavior is highly suspicious, but she could either be a victim or a willing accomplice. While Angie sleeps, someone enters her room. It's Mrs. Risdell, watching the girl sleep, but she has a vial with a strange liquid in her hand. She pours it into the water pitcher, mixing it in such a way that it can't be noticed. Mrs. Risdell has only one intention with this, that they remain on the island, happy forever. Even stranger is when she says that the girl must know that surrendering to destiny is the key to making that happen. Worried, Jerome asks his young master if he can at least sit up. The boy is in his room. There are several marks on Kylik's arm, the same as the ones on Angie's and Mikhail's arms, as well as several empty vials scattered on the floor. For Kylik, what matters is that it's over. Jerome asks how he feels, and the young master replies that it's not so bad. He just feels a bit dizzy, and the steward says he's happy about that, as he had doubts about whether the treatment was truly effective. But Kylik says there's no way to know when the madness will strike again. Still, this will be enough for now. The young master thinks about calling Angie soon to share the good news with her. Elsewhere, a serious conversation is taking place. Louise says that dreams are just dreams and nothing more than that. She says that the man Angie sees is a mere illusion. Mrs. Risdell asks if that means he's not a fugitive. Louise replies that everyone who tried to escape the island was captured and dealt with according to the rules, saying that some were lost at sea, but there's no chance they survived. She says that if Angie starts drinking the rose tea again, there shouldn't be any more problems. The woman asks if the girl's cold was the only reason she stopped drinking it, wanting to know if they're certain there isn't another reason. Mrs. Risdell explains that the honey tea helps with colds and promises to be more careful from now on. The woman seems to believe that. Then she says she will provide more sedative, explaining that they just need to mix the liquid from the vial with water. She says this will ensure that Angie sleeps through the night without having any dreams. The parents thank her for that. Mr. Risdell, however, seems very worried. He asks if his daughter will be okay, because they heard that Lord Kylik had rejected Angie as a remedy before starting his treatment. The woman confirms, saying that she managed to convince him otherwise. Mr. Risdell says they know Angie's blood is highly compatible for the young lord, but wonders if they shouldn't be able to find another remedy. The woman says that the two have become very attached to Angie over the years, which makes her think that all the children of Angie's age were taken. She says they think of her almost as if they were her real parents. The lady admits that, over the years spent with Angie, she has truly grown fond of her, and that there's no one in the world as bright and kind as her. The way she speaks makes the woman realize that yes, and she starts to answer their question by saying there's nothing to fear, since Master Kylik wishes for Angie to be safe and well. She says that if there's ever another issue with the girl's memory, they can employ the next step, resetting her mind with induced amnesia. In a place very different from Cullinan Island, inside a luxurious hall, a man is quietly reading. His daughter announces that Martin is there. Wilhelm is the founder of Amitige Steel Company and a member of the upper chamber. Smiling, Martin says that it's been a while since they last saw each other. Mr. Amitige agrees and asks his guest to sit. He asks if the young man wants a merchant ship to sail to the island. Martin confirms, explaining that he only needs a sailboat as a disguise. He says that even though it's been a long time, he remembers that the place isn't far, and any boat that can last a week will be enough. Wilhelm says that won't be difficult to arrange, but he wants to know if Martin will be safe, thinking about the possibility of something happening to him. His daughter seems ready to intervene, but gently the young man holds her arm, stopping her. Martin asks her not to worry, saying that as long as he doesn't enter the island, nothing dangerous will happen. The man reluctantly agrees with that. Wilhelm asks if he really believes he'll be able to find the girl from his dreams. Martin admits he's not sure, but says he wants to check, because there shouldn't be any more victims. Wilhelm agrees, saying it's been a while since he's seen that determined look in him. Martin is a victim too, kidnapped and taken to the island against his will, and claims there are more children in the same situation, just like the man's daughter. In the not-so-distant past, Mr. Amitige had asked him if he realized how absurd his claims sounded, accusing Duke Blackwell of forcibly taking children to Cullinan Island. He also said that their memories were manipulated, making them addicted to something cultivated there. Wilhelm had thought it was all nonsense. The man says he's deeply grateful for Martin rescuing his daughter at the risk of his own life. He explains that Bryn was simply lost, wandering the grounds, which drew the attention of some criminals. The Blackwell House is a collateral branch of the Trieste royal family and the most powerful family on the continent. Wilhelm has no desire for any dealings with them, and even though he's the richest man in Wintergard, he doesn't compare to them. In the end, the man says he doesn't know where Martin got those ideas, but advises him to stop talking about it, and that he will reward him for saving his daughter. But Martin insists, saying that this is their modus operandi, targeting orphans whom no one will miss and transporting them to the island as sacrifices. The young man asks if he doesn't remember. His daughter dirty and disoriented after being caught in a sudden rain where no one knew who she was, so she could have been mistaken for an orphan. That leaves the man speechless. Martin refuses his reward, but asks that the money be used for the good of the country's children, to ensure they won't be left vulnerable like he was and dragged to the island. Wilhelm, considering for a moment that what Martin says could be true, asks how the Blackwells could have created such a bizarre secret organization. If they needed the island to cultivate a property on the continent, it would have been a safer choice. And they could have found much stronger labor than mere children. Martin asks if he's ever heard of the black ritual called eternity. The young man explains that about 10 years ago, the Blackwell House began practicing the forbidden ritual. All he knows is that it requires the flesh and blood of children to obtain something humans should never covet. Back on Cullinan Island, Myle is delighted with the gift he received. Angie says that she wanted to give back to the people she felt indebted to during her time at the mansion. She asks if he liked it, and the albino confirms, saying it's absolutely wonderful. Myle says that she didn't do it just for him. He says he couldn't help but hope, since it was the first time she had asked to meet him and given him a gift. Angie realizes that he's disappointed and had no idea he would feel that way. Still, the young man wants to clarify something. He says that the spelling of his name isn't correct. Even though the pronunciation is the same, it's spelled differently. Immediately, Angie says she'll fix it, but Myle shakes his head and says it's fine. He's just happy that she knows how to spell it correctly now. He asks if she's finished her work at the mansion, saying that in his case, he'll still be there for a while longer. Angie says she doesn't think there's anything left for her to do there. In the meantime, her thoughts drift back to the conversation she had with her mother. Since that day, she's been at home, doing embroidery, and for some reason, she stopped dreaming of Martin. She doesn't want to drink rose tea anymore, because there may still be things she doesn't know. At the mansion, people are talking about the succession ceremony for Master Kylek, which will be held soon, probably within a few months now that his treatment is complete. The hooded woman asks if this means he will go to the continent, and the woman confirms, explaining that he is expected to have an audience with His Majesty. Hester becomes worried about Myle, but the housekeeper tells her not to worry, because she has everything under control. First, they need to find a new remedy for Master Kylek, and they must be prepared for any circumstances. She says that although Angie's blood is the most compatible, there's little that can be done given how intense the Master is about the subject. Then, taking advantage of the moment, the woman says they must find a child suitable for the position. Meanwhile, Angie is in her room sleeping, while downstairs her parents are talking. Mrs. Risdell says she doesn't know how long they'll keep drugging the girl, but admits she doesn't think it's right. The man tells her not to let her resolve weaken. He trusts Louise's word that there's no reason to worry at the moment. They just need to make sure things don't escalate to the point of having to take the second step. Mrs. Risdell asks if he doesn't feel the same way. He says he hopes Angie holds a special place in Kylik's heart beyond her role as companion and attendant. He reminds her of the gift Angie received that afternoon, which the master said was to thank her for all her hard work. They've never heard of him sending gifts to anyone else. The man talks about Angie's expression when she received it. The girl, smiling shyly, deeply moved that her embroidery had been used on the dress. In the end, Mr. Risdell says she's right, but there isn't much they can do. He says it's simply a fleeting passion of youth, and that Master Killick must know this better than anyone, and that, considering the heavy burden on his shoulders, he's certain Killick wouldn't make a reckless decision. Angie, who appeared to be sleeping peacefully in her room, is actually fully awake, listening closely. She's stunned by what she just heard. Since returning home, Angie has noticed that she's been falling asleep unusually quickly, always after drinking water before going to bed. At first, she thought it was a side effect of having stopped drinking rose tea, but then she found the note hidden inside the box that the dress came in, a letter from Kylik asking her to meet him wearing the beautiful dress. Having the feeling that tonight she shouldn't drink the water her mother gives her, she pretended to be asleep. Finally, her parents went to bed, and Angie took this chance to sneak out. The girl runs through the village wearing the dress he gave her. Her mind is filled with questions about why her mother has been giving her that water, whether it's because of what she told her about Martin, or if it's because she fears her relationship with Kai becoming serious. Angie wants to understand exactly what has been put in her water and what this second step is. There are so many things she doesn't know, and she wonders if everything that's been hidden from her is just the tip of the iceberg. Angie jumps in surprise when someone calls her. It's Jerome, who, concerned, asks if she ran there, saying that she still has plenty of time. He says she looks pale and asks if she'd like to catch her breath for a moment. Angie shakes her head, saying she wants to see her beloved right away. Reading this, I can't help but think there's no one on this island she can truly trust. Back to Angie. Even if only for a brief moment, she just wants to be in his arms and leave her worries behind. The meeting is once again in the sanctuary. Angie feels a bit nervous. She stops in front of the sanctuary door, until she finally gathers the courage to enter, and comes face to face with her beloved Kai. The Duke of Blackwell smiles, glad that she managed to come. Angie is happy to see him too, and she's grateful to see that he's well. In fact, he looks much better than before. She asks if he's completely healed, and if that means he won't have to suffer anymore. Without taking his eyes off her, Killick confirms it, saying that everything is fine. Kylik's attention is fully on her, and even his hat slips off. He tells her the dress suits her perfectly, revealing that he had it made especially for her. He then asks if she recognizes the lace with the calendulas. Of course, she recognizes her own creation. Angie says that when she was making lace at the mansion, she had no idea that later it would become part of her dress. Killick explains that he wanted to give her something meaningful. Her cheeks burn as she thanks him for the gift. He has one request, that she call him only by his name, without the Lord title, something only she is allowed to do. Angie wonders if he's unaware of everything that's happening, of what people think of him, and if he's oblivious to the secrets hidden on the island. She says she doesn't know if she should accept such a generous gift, but Killick says she deserves everything and so much more, revealing that he was just waiting for his treatment to end so he could finally say something. With all tenderness, he asks for the honor, to hold her in his arms that night. A lustful atmosphere fills the air, as pieces of clothing scatter across the floor. The two share tender kisses. Killick gazes at Angie with a seductive look, while she seems shy as she watches him undo the knots of her clothing, but her eyes are filled with emotion. Killick asks her not to be afraid, assuring her that she can push him away at any time if she wishes. He only wants to share all of himself with her. Angie feels the same way, wanting so much to touch him. She thinks that there are more urgent matters she should be dealing with, but she can't hold back any longer. At least for this moment, she just wants to feel his warmth, to feel her beloved Kai completely. Lord Killick kisses her hand with tenderness. He whispers her name, wanting her to know something. How much he had been waiting for this moment. After that night, they had each other many more times, craving one another even more. It was impossible for them to stop. Then there's that scent of Killick, the heat of his body, and his heavy breathing. All of it together is sweet. The more they had each other, the stronger the longing grew. For endless nights, they blindfolded each other, shutting out the world, submerged in an abyss of ecstasy. The sounds they made could be heard from outside. In the middle of that night, Myle is listening too. The young man doesn't look happy. He squeezes the handkerchief Angie gave him as a gift. When the moment passes, Angie enjoys the fresh night air. Kai asks if she's sure she doesn't want to be carried, as she looks very tired, leaving her completely flustered. Despite having no energy left, Angie says she's fine. She feels as though the Lord has become even more cunning than before. Gently, Kai smiles at the sight before him. Then he approaches his beloved. He suggests that the two take a quiet walk, because there's something he'd like to show her. With her cheeks slightly flushed, she agrees, curious about it. Angie is moved by the sight of the fireflies, realizing that there's something more beyond that. Then something makes her eyes widen. The young master asks her opinion about it. Kalik asks if she likes the view. Angie finds the place stunning, saying with excitement that it's a breathtaking scene. Kalik explains that his father told him he used to come there often with his mother before they got married. He reveals that Angie is the first person he's ever brought there. Kalik asks if she remembers that he had something to tell her when his treatment ended. Of course she remembers that he promised to talk about their future. Holding her hands, Kai has something to tell her. Angie's eyes shine with anticipation. As the wind cuts through the quiet forest, a thought crosses her mind. She's momentarily ignoring the hidden secrets and her lingering unease. No one else took her seriously. But maybe Kai will listen. Angie believes he might believe her without doubt. Duke Blackwell calls her name. Kalik reveals that he's often watched her from there. Hearing that on the days she didn't visit him, she would be helping her parents with their work. Kalik refers to the house below. It's the house on the north coast. Angie had no idea that those cliffs led up to the Blackwell mansion. The young master reveals that that's when those feelings began to grow. He believes it may have been even before that, because every time he looked at her sweet face, there was only one feeling he experienced. It made him feel alive. The young man was always watching her. Kalik says he wishes for her to share in that joy too. Their faces are close, their breaths mingling. He asks Angie if she will go to the continent with him. This catches the girl completely by surprise. Hesitant, she wants to understand better. Angie asks how they can go to the continent, prompting the revelation that everything they were told about the toxic gas there is false, and that countless people are building new lives there. Kai says that his succession ceremony will be there and that he plans to settle there once he officially receives his title. He says he had many things to tell her, but had to wait until his treatment was finished. Now, he can share everything, but one thing at a time, promising to make right everything he had neglected. This means that soon we'll learn more about the curse he intends to break. In the meantime, Kai says he hopes she will stay by his side. Somewhere else, broken wood is seen, carried by the sea. The crew members walk, covered in dirt, along the sand. But there's a lingering question in the air. Did they reach their destination? A girl rushes into the embroidery room, excitedly asking if they've heard the news. They already know about the Navy ship spotted off the coast of Cullinan Island. Emma also shares that apparently the captain of the ship met with Lord Kylek. The captain said it was a miracle because they were caught in a storm and somehow ended up exactly where they wanted to be. He explained that the waters were considered difficult to cross because of the heavy fog, which he believed was the reason the island had always been so safe, believing it to be divine providence. Emma adds that the captain claimed the world beyond the island is safe, but they said they need to observe the situation for a few more years. Angie keeps embroidering while the girls happily chat, saying they thought they'd be stuck in that place forever. She seems a little uneasy about it, because to her, the continent had always felt like an impossible dream, until the night before. Kylek had told her to think carefully about it because he would be waiting for her. Angie finds it a strange coincidence, almost as if it were fate. At least it's now clear that everything Martin said was true. That means the boy really exists somewhere far from Cullinan Island, making it more likely that what he said about the tea is also true. Angie believes she can't see him in her dreams anymore because of the effects of the new medication. She wishes she could know more, not only because she wants answers to all of this, but also because she wants to help Kai as much as she can, because he has been sick for so long. So Angie believes he doesn't know much about what's truly happening on the island. But her thoughts are interrupted when she notices something wrong with Letitia. Angie says that her friend looks pale and asks if she's feeling okay. The other girls don't notice anything because they're too distracted gossiping. Then Letitia calls for Angie and asks if she has ever met Lord Kylek before. Letitia says she imagines she hasn't, since such opportunities are rare. Angie wants to understand why she's suddenly bringing up Kai, but for some reason, she can't bring herself to ask. Still, she's never seen her friend so frightened before. Angie is deeply worried about this, so she calls her friend's name, offering her help with whatever Letitia wants to say, no matter what it may involve. Letitia thanks Angie for that, saying that she is the dearest person in the world to her. Meanwhile, Angie wonders why she didn't realize it at that moment, that right then and there, she had made a huge mistake. Back at the Blackwell mansion, Kai is with Jerome as usual. The young master says that sometimes he finds himself imagining something. His mother's look as she stared at his father amidst the raging flames the day she discovered the whole truth. He thinks about what she might have said to Edward, her face so pale that not a single drop of vital blood remained. His father truly loved his mother, but realized it far too late. Kai says that maybe that's why he's so determined to avoid doing anything he would come to regret. He turns to look Jerome in the eyes and says that Jerome was loyal to his father, and that he won't hold a grudge if Jerome chooses a different path, but if he dares to stand in his way, he will face the consequences. Kai asks if he understands the warning. Jerome replies that he respects his wishes just as much as he respected Edward's. From the shadows, the housekeeper is secretly listening to their conversation. She murmurs that if things continue like this, there will be problems. Louise believes it's better to act first, and so she slips away from the place. Then the door opens, revealing Myle standing there, having witnessed it. 2 weeks pass. Everyone is amazed by the Duke's mansion. The girls are already there, calling for Angie to hurry up. She's wearing a beautiful blue dress. Kai's succession ceremony has been officially announced. He is set to leave for the continent with the Navy officers to claim his title, and a 3-day banquet has been organized by the island's residents before his departure. Surprisingly, the people are not fearful, but rather intrigued by the idea of a new world. There's also a strong sense of anticipation about finally seeing the face of the future Duke, which has remained a mystery. Perhaps everyone had been suppressing their curiosity about Kai and the continent until now, because that's what was expected of them. Angie believes that it probably hasn't been any easier for Kai all this time either. Someone walks up to the girl. It's Jerome, asking her to accompany him for a moment. She agrees, believing it's Kai wanting to see her. Angie tells her friends that she'll rejoin them shortly. Then she follows the house steward. The two quietly walk past the crowd, unnoticed. Meanwhile, Letitia is standing beside Harold Durbin, the Blackwell House treasurer and administrative supervisor. Her father tells the girl that he hopes she is prepared, reminding her that mistakes will not be tolerated, and I believe he has some sort of plan for an arranged marriage with the new Duke. After all, he says she carries the future of the family on her shoulders. Someone approaches the two of them. It's Louise, saying that she has been waiting for them. And I don't trust this woman one bit. Harold gets straight to the point, asking if they're going directly to see Lord Kylik. But the housekeeper denies it, saying they will start by discussing some matters with her first. They start walking away, until Harold notices Letitia standing still and asks if she's going to just stand there like a fool. The girl is clearly frightened, but she ends up following her father. Meanwhile, Angie is walking with Jerome. She's surprised when she realizes they are heading to the sanctuary where their meetings usually take place. The girl turns when she hears her name being called. Kai is there, waiting for her. The future Duke is dressed in formal attire. He tells her to relax because no one will come into this place. Kellic hugs her, saying he missed her. Angie asks if he's sure he has time to see her, imagining he must be busy. Lord Blackwell says nothing really interests him more than being there with her. His words make the girl blush deeply. Angie is incredibly happy about this, but there's something she's been thinking about a lot. About that day on the cliff, with the fireflies surrounding them. Angie would be lying if she said she wasn't afraid. The thought still lingers, because long before Kai mentioned the continent, even before meeting Martin, or maybe even before when she first met someone interested in things beyond the island, she could have anticipated the moment she would set foot in that new world. So the moment Angie heard Kai's words, the first emotion that surfaced inside her was excitement. If she could go there with Kellic, and fate offered her that chance. Therefore, Angie says she would like to go, surprising her beloved Kellic. The girl wants to make her desire clear. She makes it clear that she wants to go to the continent with him. Angie admits she feels a bit guilty for having to leave her parents and friends behind. Kellic tells her not to worry. He says it might take some time, but he will make sure the people she loves can settle in the capital. That makes the girl very happy. Taking something out, Kellic says now it's his turn. He opens a blue box with golden details, and Angie asks what it is. The young master explains it's sacred tears, a jewel passed down through generations of women in his family. Kellic says that his father gave it to his mother, and now he wants to give it to her. Then he places the jewel on her beautiful dress, and stammering a little, Angie says she doesn't know if she should accept something like that. Kellic asks who else he would give it to if not her. Originally, he intended to give her a necklace and a ring, but explains that tradition dictates they exchange those when making their vows. This leaves Angie very surprised. The girl asks if he's sure about this. She says she has nothing to her name and very little to offer, and that he is a Blackwell, a collateral line of the royal family. A sound interrupts their moment. It's Jerome, apologizing but saying it's time for Kai to leave. Kylek hands a letter to Angie and asks her to read it carefully. Everything he wants to say is contained there and should give her all the answers she needs. With a kiss, he promises he will be in touch soon. And then they will only need to start preparing to leave the island. Then he leaves, leaving Angie alone. She holds the letter tightly. Her heart is still racing. Every time she is with Kai, it feels like walking on clouds. Someone rushes toward her, calling her name. It's Myle, quickly approaching. The boy is breathless from running, but he manages to tell her that she needs to come immediately, leaving her confused. Myle explains that her friend is in trouble. Whatever it is, Letitia doesn't seem well, so Angie runs desperately toward her. She asks her friend if she's okay. Angie says she thought she had said she wouldn't be able to attend the banquet. However, Letitia rejects her touch, leaving the girl confused by this reaction. Letitia seems furious with her and asks why Angie lied when she asked the question. At that moment, Myle tries to catch up with them. Letitia shouts that she knew Lord Kalik beforehand. Everything is confusing for Angie. Then she remembers that day in the embroidery class, when the girl asked if she knew Lord Kalik, and Letitia said she shouldn't have a reason for such rare opportunities. Starting to understand what's happening, Angie calls Letitia by name, asking if she's there to see Kai. Before that, Letitia had gone to her father, Harold. She said she felt hesitant about the plan. She also confessed that she was afraid and didn't want to see Lord Kylek, because everyone says his face is grotesque, like a monster. Letitia asks if it's too late to reconsider, but Harold wants to understand what nonsense his daughter is talking about. Louise tells him not to speak absurdities, revealing to Letitia that Angie willingly took on this role before her. This leaves Letitia completely shocked. Back to the present, she asks about the appearance of the new Duke. Letitia says she doubts Angie will answer after keeping this secret from her for years. Myle carefully approaches them. Letitia asks her friend to stay away because she doesn't want to see her right now. Angie even tries to approach, but the girl ends up screaming, and that startles her quite a bit. Amid the hysteria, the letter Kai had given her falls to the ground. Myle touches her arm, catching her attention. He asks her to go with him, telling her that the other girls will take care of Letitia so she doesn't have to worry about it. Angie just accepts what he says. She looks back at her friend's situation. There's nothing she can do, and staying there might only make things worse. Distracted, she doesn't even notice when Myle secretly hides her letter. After that banquet, some time passes. Mrs. Risdell asks Angie if she feels better while preparing a compress. She notices that the girl's fever doesn't seem to go down. She can't believe she got sick in the middle of summer. After the banquet, Angie made several attempts to see Letitia, but the girl refused to see her every time, as well as anyone else, and she ended up losing Kai's letter, which made her feel like an idiot. Mr. Risdell enters, wanting to know the state of his daughter's health. Her mother explains that she's better, but they still need to keep an eye on her, and he's holding the medication prescribed by Dr. Johnson. He mentions that animal carcasses are appearing near the forest again. Mrs. Risdell asks if they were also found near the north coast, remembering that months have passed since the last incident. The father asks if she knows the latest news. It's about Letitia, and Angie reacts the moment she hears her name. Mr. Risdell says he heard at the chapel that she will soon be engaged to Lord Kylek. This makes Angie panic. She asks what he means by that. The girl is trembling badly. Angie asks if Letitia and Lord Kylek are really engaged. She wants her father to tell her if it's true, and if the Blackwell family made an official announcement about it. Angie also questions if Kai knows about this, but she doesn't even have time to hear the answer. The girl faints in the middle of it all, leaving her parents very frightened. Angie had been so sure that the only thing left was for them to live their lives together. She wonders where everything went wrong. Meanwhile, on the continent, Martin calls for his grandmother. Catherine Wynne is sitting, working on her knitting. Smiling, the grandson waves at his grandmother. She calls him Philip. Martin asks how she's doing and says it's strange to be called that, but she says that's his name. Smiling, he says he spent years without knowing his real name. The girl accompanying him greets his grandmother. Bryn introduces herself and asks if the lady remembers her. Catherine says she remembers the daughter of the general store owner, and Martin reminds her that she's also his fiancée, whom he brought over several times. This worries the young man, as his grandmother's memory seems to be getting more and more confused. Regardless, he promises to visit her more often. Just like Bryn, Catherine thinks it's wonderful to see their beautiful faces more frequently. Martin says he's there to help her with chores and asks her to tell him what she'd like him to do. While he sweeps the floor of the house, Bryn and the elderly woman cook. To him, it still feels surreal to experience such simple joys. 9 years ago, he risked his life to escape the island. While living the life of a traveler, he crossed paths with Bryn. At that moment, he felt an instinctive need to rescue her, thus leaving that nightmare past behind. They started a new life. Then, with the help of Wilhelm van Ametige, the young man managed to find his long-lost grandmother, and even discovered that his real name is Philip. Martin smiles at these memories. Suddenly, something catches his attention, and he picks up a picture frame. Catherine says it's the only photo she has since the others were burned during the war. The lady says the two share a similar aura, which confuses Martin. Then she explains that she means Bryn and the boy's sister. Martin is shocked to learn he has a sister. Catherine asks if he didn't know, and the boy says he still hasn't fully recovered his memories. The grandmother is saddened by this. She says that he had a twin sister. Catherine says the girl was very lovely and cheerful and had eyes just like his. Smiling, she says she remembers that her name was Amber Wynn. Now the entire connection he feels with Angie makes sense. Then the grandmother says that the two of them used to love singing that song from their hometown. This seems to stir something inside Martin when he hears the tune. The same one from his dream. Martin is taken back to a memory, one of him singing with his sister and mother. Amber happily asks if he thinks she did well with the song, and he agrees while ruffling her hair. The boy promises to teach her a different song, which makes his little sister happy as she says he must not break the promise. He smiles, saying he will keep it. All of this revelation hits Martin hard. Looking at the photo, he recognizes Angie. Bryn grows worried about her fiancé, seeing how shaken he is. Now everything is clear to Martin. Everything simply falls into place. Back on the island, Myle asks his aunt if she wants him to keep waiting. He asks how much longer he has to stay there because things could end soon. Hester seems a bit concerned. Looking at the stain, she says he still hasn't fixed his habit. Myle asks her not to change the subject. He says that he has been hiding, pretending to be sick all these years until the Duke of Blackwell died. So he asks if this isn't the time to reveal the truth. Hester admits she recently spoke with Louise, and that apparently she has made plans for Lord Kyleck's engagement ceremony. She says that requests may be made soon, so he needs to wait until then. But Myle doesn't seem very happy with that suggestion. Meanwhile, Angie is walking through the streets, using her cloak to remain invisible to the people. Myle spots her and tells his aunt that he'll go ahead. He also asks Hester to explain the rest when they meet again. Hester is truly worried about his behavior, believing that his instincts will one day land him in serious trouble. The two walk side by side. Myle says he heard that she had been sick for a while and asks if she's okay. Angie says she doesn't know because, although the fever has passed, she still feels weak. She also hasn't heard anything about Letitia since that fateful day. The girl completely cut her off. That still troubles Angie. It's still hard for her to believe that everything Kai told her. She wonders if all the comfort and sweet promises were lies. Angie wants to believe there are circumstances beyond his control, but it's very hard to convince herself of that. Myle notices how upset she is. He then calls her name. The two face each other. Myle steps closer and, holding her face, declares, "If it were me, I would never leave your side." Myle says he would look into her eyes and share his warmth whenever she needed it. Confused, Angie asks what he's trying to say, but he just asks if she still doesn't understand. Myle declares that he can ease her loneliness. For that, it doesn't matter what happens. A voice interrupts the moment. It's Kai, asking what Myle thinks he is to say such things. Angie is in complete shock at the figure standing there. She never expected this. Lord Kyleck says it's absurd for him to think he could be a worthy substitute, and provokes him by asking how he dares to do this. Stepping in front of Angie, Kai says this will be his first and last warning, ordering him never to appear before Angie again. But Myle has no intention of letting the insult slide. He asks if Angie is aware of how dangerous the Lord is. Myle also says that Kai has been deceiving an innocent young girl all this time. Blackwell is stunned by his audacity. Before it escalates further, Angie begs them to stop. Looking at Kai, she asks how it would look if people saw him behaving like this, making it clear that he still hasn't formally presented himself to the people of Cullinan Island. Kyleck seems to understand that she's right. Even so, like a protective hound, he takes Angie away from there, asking her to go with him. Myle just watches it all. Angie feels uneasy about the situation. She apologizes to her friend. Jerome is waiting for them beside the carriage. Angie sits beside her beloved in complete silence. Then Kai speaks first, asking why she didn't go to the meeting point, saying that he waited for her all night, but Angie doesn't understand what he's talking about. Kyleck asks if she didn't read his letter. Angie remembers that he had given it to her, but she admits that she lost it that very night. Now things start to make sense. Kyleck says that there was probably a misunderstanding and intends to explain. Already Angie has something else in mind. She asks if that will change the fact that he will be engaged to Letitia. The Lord's eyes widen. He tries to explain, but the girl ignores him and says it's fine, also saying that everything is exactly as the rumors say, that everything is really true. It was now clear to her about the location and time of the engagement ceremony and all the previous plans. It seemed like everyone was happy except her, as if the time they had spent together meant nothing. Angie thinks that eventually her very existence will also mean nothing. She says that soon she will return the brooch because it is only fair that a family heirloom belongs to the future bride. Kylek questions what nonsense she is talking about and makes it clear that the gift remains hers. The Lord reveals that he does not love Letitia. He says that in his letter it was written that the marriage was nothing more than something of convenience. Kylek says there are many people watching them and suggests that they go to the capital, but Angie refuses, asking if he is suggesting that she become his mistress while working as his servant there. He asks his beloved not to say that, promising that this will never happen because he will make sure she has her own residence there. Kylek says that she will not need to talk to anyone from the Blackwell house and that no one will ever be able to touch her. The young master intends to explain the reason for the marriage, but Angie once again stops him from explaining. She says that if she had known all this, she never would have gotten involved with him. Angie says that she would have tried her best not to fall in love, and if that failed, she would never have shown her true feelings. Her words shock Kylek, leaving him silent. The girl then says goodbye to him. Before she can open the door, someone calls for the master. Angie believes it must be Jerome. Either way, Kylek stops her from leaving. He says he can't allow that, because there are still many things they need to resolve. His extreme attitude frightens the girl. Angie tries to question his actions, but she collapses mid-sentence. Jerome immediately opens the carriage door, apologizing for something. The man falls silent at the scene, seeing Angie unconscious, supported by Kai. The young master then asks if anyone has discovered about the carriage, then orders them to return to the mansion. Meanwhile, on the continent, Martin says they should seize the chance when the fog lifts, asking the captain for his opinion on what they should do. The man asks if the plan is to locate the island and get close to it, and the boy agrees that this is the goal for now. Martin says it might be challenging because of the storm, but claims he can't miss this opportunity. The captain wants to know how this will be done. He says they will set sail before the storm hits, anchoring on a nearby rocky island and heading to Cullinan as soon as the fog clears. Martin agrees that this won't be a problem. All he wants is to find Angie. Back on Cullinan Island, Angie wakes up. The girl calls out Martin's name because of the dream she had. She heard that he is coming to find her. It will be interesting to understand how this connection between the two works. At the moment, Angie is just trying to understand where she is. Kylek notices that she has finally woken up, but his appearance is terrible. He doesn't give her time to complain and apologizes, saying it was the best he could do. Kylek warns that there are many people watching her and wanting to harm her, declaring that she is safe there and that she should relax. Angie begs to go home, asking if she shouldn't avoid being with him. After all, the people after her want to stop her from becoming an obstacle for him. The girl says she won't change her mind no matter what he says. Angie says she will stay on this island, that she will continue living her life alongside her parents as it is now, and that he should go to the capital to assume his duty with the succession and marriage. Kylek first apologizes to her and says that it's too late, that it was already too late from the moment they confirmed their feelings for each other. But he isn't sure about that, because it was from the moment she sat down to tell her stories. Kylek walks to the door of his room, but he doesn't open it yet, because before that, the master has a request. Kylek asks Angie not to abandon him, and that is how the young lord leaves, leaving a tormented Angie behind. Some time passes since that incident, and Myle goes after Mrs. Risdell. He asks if Angie went to help manage the annex of the Blackwell mansion. The woman realizes that he still doesn't know about it, explaining that her daughter was urgently called the previous night because Lord Kylek needed help with the engagement. Mrs. Risdell reveals that she learned this from Jerome. Myle becomes thoughtful about it. Anyway, he ends up thanking the woman for telling him. He intends, no matter what, to go see her. It's raining heavily outside. Angie remains curled up in bed. She has lost track of how many days she's been there. Kai appears every night, silently watching her. Angie can see in his eyes that he wants an answer she will never give. She cried and screamed in anger, but none of it helped. Once, she even tried to end it all but was stopped by him. Then he buried his head against her for a long time. Angie realized he was silently crying. Kylek confided that his mother was a sacrificial lamb for a curse his grandfather had created, something so vile and terrible it defied imagination. His grandfather of sublime miracle. And after witnessing the true nature of the curse, his father chose to hide it from his mother. But that didn't last long. One day, Eugenia discovered that what was written in the records was true. She screamed. asking how he could do something so hateful. Edward tried to talk to her, but the woman demanded that he stay away. A fire started in the middle of the argument. Eugenia swore she would never forgive him, not even in death. Calix says his father lived with regret for the rest of his days, while he grew up seeing the weight of that burden. Thus, the Duke doesn't want to feel the same way his father did. Angie remains silent. Calix says that the salvation she gave him will not be in vain. Then he begs his beloved once again. Outside, the master orders that food be prepared that's easy to swallow, along with warm water and milk. Annette leaves to fulfill his request. Louise appears, commenting that he really brought the girl to the mansion. Calix says that if he hadn't done that, someone would have tried to hurt Angie. The housekeeper asks who would dare do such a thing. He has an answer for that, and says that maybe it's the Cullinan fanatics who want a remedy, or perhaps an employee of the house who sees Angie as an obstacle. Calix assures Louise that she doesn't need to worry, because he will leave the island as soon as the storm ends and continue with the engagement plans. But there is one condition. If there are still amnesia vials in the mansion, she must destroy every last one. The housekeeper tries to argue, but Calix says that if she doesn't obey, there will be no more negotiations. That makes the woman fall silent. But Louise still wants to know why he chose Angie. When they couldn't find a compatible remedy, the girl was chosen after much deliberation. Kai says that then she knows the reason better than anyone, repeating what she said, that with Angie's vitality, it was worth seeking change this time. Kylek questions whether she was convinced the girl would please him. He says that is the reason. At that moment, Myle overhears their conversation. Meanwhile, Angie remains lying in the room. There's not much to do since she's chained. Suddenly, she feels very nauseous. Angie thinks the reason for this is that she hasn't eaten. She wants to understand the reason for it. Then something crosses her mind. Angie wonders when her last cycle was. But someone knocks at the door. It can't be Kai, since he would have just left her meal on the bedside table. Then the person calls out to her, asking if the girl is there. Angie recognizes that voice. And then the veil separating them is lifted by Myle. Angie is confused to see him there, wanting to understand how he found her. The boy confesses that it was Annette who told him, that she was locked up there. Myle asks if she has the key to the shackles. She says no, that they're on the other table. He then informs her that Kai is at the dock, explaining that there seems to be a problem with the ship bound for the continent. He manages to free Angie from the shackles. But Angie still has that sad, distant look, and she looks around, frightened. Myle notices her reaction, telling her they don't have much time. Myle says they have to go and that they can talk about things later. Frightened, Angie asks if he wants her to leave the place. Myle tries to explain why she shouldn't stay there, but Angie refuses. The girl says she wants to stay, refusing to leave with him. But even so, the two make their escape. All this amid the eerie sounds coming from outside. They take shelter from the rain under a tree. Angie lets out a tired sigh. She tells the boy that she can manage on her own from there, advising him to return to the mansion. Her plan is to cross the forest to reach the cliff, as the north coast is just below, and once with her parents, she will be completely safe. Myle insists on accompanying her, claiming that it's his day off, and says that she can barely keep her balance. With a tired expression, she finally agrees to let him take her to the north coast. Angie thanks him for it. Myle says he's happy to help her. He holds her face, making her look at him. Myle says there's something he needs to tell her once they get there. As the rain continues, they find safety in the house. Myle serves the girl some hot tea. Angie asks if he's sure he doesn't need to leave, but he tells her not to worry because everyone else is preoccupied with the ship. He asks how long she was locked up, and the girl isn't sure if it was 4 days or more. Myle has a guess, believing it all started that night. Angie reveals that Lord Kylek wanted to take her to the capital and that she refused. She confirms that's how she ended up there, and Myle wants to know what she plans to do now. Angie plans to tell her parents everything when she gets there, that the entire island could belong to Lord Kylek, and that all of them could be working for House Blackwell. She even asks if, should her parents want her to stay, Kai won't be able to do anything about it. Angie doesn't know what he's thinking, but believes he wouldn't disturb the peace of the village. But Myle seems to have a different opinion. He has something to say about it. He reveals that both Cullinan Island and its residents aren't as peaceful and innocent as they seem, even though they've tried to make the place look like paradise. His words confuse Angie, and she asks what he means. He has something to say about the strange things that have been happening to her. Myle reveals that it's all connected to the Black Mass, and that the gathering of war survivors was planned from the very beginning, because all these people are contaminated by a curse. This revelation shocks Angie. She asks what he's talking about. Myle says he overheard Mrs. Dunst and her close associates talking. Then he explains that young people like him and Angie are called remedies. while the rest are the helpers who work for House Blackwell. The boy says he's going to tell her the whole truth and that she'll have to believe everything. The rain continues to pour heavily. Angie tries to make sense of his confession. She asks if the Black Mass Eternity ritual has been happening since the previous Duke's time, and if a remedy has to be sacrificed in the ritual, and Myle confirms it, saying they're called that because they're used as treatment. The albino says he's heard that all of this is to achieve immortality and eternal life. It's too much for Angie to believe. However, she remembers that day in the church when she overheard talk about blood transfusions from a remedy. In the end, she feels disappointed because everything that's happened so far is starting to make sense. Angie asks him to confirm if the drug in the rose tea is called opium rose. In addition to confirming, Myle explains that apparently, long-term consumption results in gradual memory loss, but it seems to have no effect on adults who work as helpers because they've built up a resistance to it. This time, the girl wants to know exactly how the remedies are sacrificed. Angie asks if everyone is okay, including her friends from embroidery and others who attend the service. But Myle just asks her another question, if that's really what she believes. Then he pulls up the sleeve of his shirt, asking her to take a look. What she sees leaves her completely shocked. Myle explains that he had said it was because of an illness, but in reality, they were going through the same thing, only without any memory of it. Angie says she has many friends who have disappeared. Then she asks what he thinks will happen to them once they're no longer useful as remedies. He says he doesn't know, believing they might be expelled from the island after completely losing their memories. Myle also says he's convinced that the people in House Blackwell know how to leave the place, and that they're the ones responsible for preventing anyone from leaving, to keep the island in total isolation. Frightened, Angie asks if it wasn't the sharks and monstrous fish that killed Elliot. The albino says those were just lies invented by the Blackwells, and that he overheard someone saying they were watching when they found the boy and tore his body apart. Angie is stunned by how cruel they could be. Myle touches her shoulder and says that these people are more cruel and hateful than they can imagine, and that they have only one option. They need to go to the capital together. Myle says this might be their last chance to escape, and he makes it clear that this might actually be her very last chance. Angie fears Lord Kylek if they decide to leave. She can't even finish her sentence. Because if what Myle said is true, it means that Kai knows everything. He definitely knows everything. This only makes Angie more agitated. Myle asks if she's okay. He says that if she's worried about her parents, then she should set the condition that she'll only leave the house if they come with her. Once in the capital, she should look for an opportunity to go somewhere very far away. Myle explains that she could cross the border to Vintgar or Vincentine, for example. Angie asks if the boat is ready to depart. The boy says it was scheduled to leave after the storm, but due to small issues, it will probably be delayed by a few days. He says that in the meantime, she should prepare to convince her parents and make them believe these are Kai's orders. But Angie planned to keep all of this a secret from her parents. And honestly, I agree, since they've already shown they're aligned with everything. She says they're being used by the Blackwells and doesn't want to tell them anything that might shock them. Myle simply agrees and says she can tell them everything once they're in the capital. Suddenly, the two are interrupted. Meanwhile, out at sea, the ship battles the storm. They need 2 more people on deck. The captain asks Martin if he's okay, noticing that he doesn't look seasick. He replies that not yet, and asks if everything's okay. Luckily, the man has been through worse and says this is nothing. The captain says they'll hold on a bit longer until the heavy rain stops so they can find the island quickly. Martin just prays that Angie is safe, until he can rescue her. The brother hopes that God will protect her. Back to Angie and Myle. Fortunately, it's just her parents who've arrived. Mrs. Risdell asks what they're doing there. Surprised. Then Myle explains that the girls' duties were finished the day before, and since it was raining heavily, they decided to wait for them there. Mrs. Risdell understands and asks Angie why her face looks so worn and if she's been overworking herself. The girl is holding back tears. Unable to take it anymore, she throws herself into her mother's arms. Mrs. Risdell feels pity, saying her daughter must have been through difficult times, while her father says he brought soup and that she should drink it before going to bed. He also offers some to Myle, but the albino says he needs to return to Blackwell Manor. Myle says that even though it's his day off, they need extra help because of the storm. Angie tries to stop him, but he whispers that it's okay. The boy says they'll see each other another time and tells her to rest. Angie thanks him for everything. A quick and strange look is exchanged between Mr. and Mrs. Risdell. Her mother seems worried about all of this. She remembers what Louise said, that Lord Kylek will settle in the capital while Angie should forget him and live a peaceful life with them. The housekeeper even tries to convince her that this would be the ideal outcome, but Mrs. Risdell seems hesitant. She says that if the amnesiac is safe to consume, it's a better option than Angie living unhappily. The woman says her daughter will be difficult to manage by Lord Kylik's side, but that there shouldn't be a problem if she remains under his care. Louise says she understands. She assures them she'll inform the young master and asks that they keep acting as usual. Back to the present at Blackwell Manor. Myle runs through the storm. The boy looks very worried. He remembers Hester telling him that orders had been given to eliminate the thing when the thunder struck and that he must fulfill his role. Even drenched by the rain, his tears mix with the water. Myle's shoulders slump from exhaustion. The boy says Lord Kylik Blackwell's name out loud. Gritting his teeth, he declares that the thing he wants will never be his. Meanwhile, the Lord asks if there's no other way. The captain regrets to say that it'll be at least 1 more week. There's nothing Kai can do. Lord Kylik then turns and walks away. Jerome, right behind him, says it will be safer to sail after the storm passes. But the problem is that if the fog clears by then, people might be surprised, and he wants to understand what his master is planning. Kylik says they won't be able to keep deceiving people with superficial tricks much longer, that it's only a matter of time before they discover it's possible to escape to the outside world. He says that eventually, people will need to be allowed to leave freely, and furthermore, that the remedies are no longer necessary. A voice calls out for the Lord. In the distance, a man runs toward him. Collapsing to the ground, he says that the Rizdels left the manor after meeting with Louise, and that he discovered the last remaining vial of the amnesiac disappeared from the supply department. It doesn't stop there. He also tells them about Angie's escape from the annex in the early hours of the morning, and that at this moment she's at the northern shore. That means they're going to use the amnesiac on the girl. Kylik rushes out, even as Jerome shouts after him. The steward warns him it will be dangerous to go alone. He asks for permission to go with him. However, Kylik simply turns and extends his hand. Jerome immediately understands the gesture. He rummages through his clothes and immediately hands over what the Lord wants. Kylik hides the item in his hand, then sets off, riding his horse, leaving behind a very worried Jerome. Kylik gallops, trying to get there as quickly as possible, amid the storm and lightning. Meanwhile, Myle is sneaking around. He tries to listen to the conversation. There's an armed group frightened because the tranquilizer didn't work on the man. Some shout for shackles to be brought as they fire more rounds. And the order is to grab the thing and strangle it. Myle stays hidden, unnoticed by them. One of the men is on the ground, begging to be spared. But it's too late for him. The metallic smell of blood fills the air, making Myle cover his mouth to avoid making a sound. Just like the cell, now smeared with blood. The creature is loose somewhere nearby. Myle does everything possible to avoid being caught. Whatever it is, it roams the area. Then it turns, revealing a grotesque, undead creature. The thing looks at Myle, but the boy remains completely still. A ring stands out on the creature's blood-soaked hand. It just keeps walking, allowing Myle to let out a sigh of relief. He had no idea it would be like this. Myle opens the cell, seeing that everything is safe for now. He walks through the mess, picks up a weapon from the ground to chase after the thing. Myle wants to know where it went, maybe into the forest and toward the cliff, back to the Rizdel family. Angie tries to convince her mother that they should start a new life on the continent, and that they can always return to the island if they can't adapt there. But her mother says it's not as simple as she thinks, and that the capital may be full of maids and skilled workers, asking what they could even do there. Mrs. Rizdel cups her daughter's face and says her wish is for the family to stay there to keep the island a happy, peaceful place. At that moment, Mr. Rizdel enters with a tray of food. Suddenly, Angie feels nauseous, just like that other time. Worried, her parents ask if she's okay, but she only replies that she's fine. Angie says she's just feeling queasy, but will feel better once she lies down for a bit, and this catches her mother's attention. The girl says that Kylik might show up soon and that she's there without informing him. If she sees him, she says she plans to make her intentions clear. Angie asks if they can consider her request just this once, claiming they could start a new life beyond this island. Mrs. Rizdel says she'll discuss it with her husband and tells her to rest a bit. Her father says he brought some medicine for her to take before going to sleep. Let's hope she remembers her parents have been drugging her for a long time. Back to them, Mr. Rizdel says she should drink it all, even if it tastes a bit bitter. Angie simply agrees. Just as she's about to drink, a gunshot startles her, making the drink spill. The sudden event leaves them terrified. More shots are fired, but none hit the villagers. Angie's eyes widen when she sees the culprit. It's Kai, shooting. Mr. Rizdel yells for Angie to get up. He shouts that they have to get out of there and that there's an escape route near the cliff. Angie begs her father to wait, but the man keeps pulling her, ignoring what his daughter is trying to say. Kai is left behind. Meanwhile, there's Myle. The boy looks like he's run a marathon. He's carrying a lantern and an axe. Hearing a noise, he turns. The creature is just a few feet away. This is John Fitzroy Blackwell, the founder of House Blackwell, who brought upon his family the most terrible curse. He abandoned his humanity and ventured into the domain of the gods. As a result, he became a monster. This thing exists devoid of all consciousness and must be eliminated from the world for everyone's sake. Myle approaches the creature. The monster, John, turns, reacting to the sound of his footsteps. Before it can attack, Myle kicks it, sending it flying backward. Myle raises his axe and strikes the creature with all his strength. Meanwhile, Hester and Louise walk together in search of the monster. Hester says she heard that John went toward the cemetery, which displeases the housekeeper. She says this was completely unforeseen, and that there's a risk of failure since the others couldn't defeat the thing on their first attempt. Since he is immortal, he will return to life even with a bullet through the heart, and even if his body is torn apart, it will reconnect. Not even silver stakes, relics, or holy water have been effective against him, with the best solution being to seal him inside an oak barrel and sink it into the depths of the river. The women continue walking, until the sound of the thing screaming catches their attention. Hester simply says it might be possible. The axe is lodged in the monster John. Myle keeps striking the creature, one blow after another, without stopping. He breaks his lantern, then lights the stick on fire. Myle sets the monster John ablaze. In the meantime, the women reach him. Louise is in disbelief over what he has done. The boy ignores her, tossing the flaming stick. The flames grow even stronger. Myle manages to smile at his aunt. He explains that at first his mind went blank. Then suddenly he had a vague premonition, one in which he could completely destroy the thing, so it could never return to life. Smiling, Myle says that's exactly what he did. Louise is shocked by all of this, but she says it's clear now that he carries the bloodline of the Blackwell family. She turns to Hester and says she finally understands. The housekeeper says they should pray for their futures, and also for the last master. John Blackwell keeps burning, while Myle wears a calm expression. He wishes the man finds rest in the depths of hell, where he will pay for his sins and for violating taboos and defying the realm of the divine. Then we return to Lord Kylek. The young man realizes that they are not in their right minds, because they are trying to hurt Angie. Kylek believes that if they truly think of the girl as their daughter, they won't be able to commit such horrible acts. The trio runs toward the cliff. Angie is being pulled by her father. Her mind is in chaos, trying to understand why Kai tried to take her life. But then she comes to another conclusion that makes her eyes widen, because perhaps the Lord's target wasn't her. Her mother screams that they won't let anyone take her away from them. Another shot is fired at them. Kylek finally catches up and demands they step away from Angie, saying that this is their final warning. The Duke only wants to stop them from using the amnesiac. His command makes them hesitate. Angie tries to say something, but the Lord yells for her to come to him. Mrs. Risdell calls out to Angie, making a plea to her daughter. She asks why the girl won't try to explain to the Lord that they're not trying to hurt her. Realizing what's about to happen, Angie runs toward her parents. But it seems too late. The two of them fall from the cliff. Kylek immediately runs to Angie. The red liquid on the rocks is proof there's no saving them. For some reason, Angie says it's a lie as tears stream down her face. Either way, Kai reaches her, but Angie instantly begs him to stop right there. She pleads with him not to come closer, then screams that he killed her parents, doing it right in front of her eyes. Angie cries uncontrollably, asking why he did it. If it was because they could have stopped him from taking her to the capital. Carefully, Kai tries to approach and asks her to calm down. Throwing his weapon to the ground, he says he will explain. The Duke says he will no longer hide anything from her and begs her to believe him. Kylek pleads with her, but he has no idea that even in this situation, Angie feels manipulated like a fool. And even though things have ended between them, she still wishes to lean on him again and bitterly resents herself for it. Angie then says that what's running through her mind means she can escape him and the island. Maybe that's the best choice. Realizing what she's about to do, Kylek yells her name, but Angie keeps stepping back. Desperate, he begs her not to do it. Kylek even tries to run to catch her, but Angie throws herself off the cliff. As she falls, Angie begs God that if she's in the middle of a horrible nightmare, to let her wake up. She also prays for eternal blessings for this tragic end. The seeds cultivated in nature are more perfect and abundant. They will become the roots of immortality for those who gain eternal life, paying with blood more deeply connected, reaping the blessings of an enduring lineage. Then the book is closed. The man is ready to begin his monologue after that. He says that if he doesn't want to lose everything he has achieved, and for the good of the family's continuity, He has no choice but to defy God, telling his servants to remember this. After obtaining the blood of the firstborn, the one who first saw the light of the world, the secondborn, who must continue the family line, will drink the mixture containing that blood. Only then will they be blessed with eternity, the gift of eternal life. And they must not forget that in this process. The sacrifice of the remedy is indispensable. This is the forbidden secret that the Blackwells must carry to the grave. Kalek wakes up from the dream where Angie jumped into the abyss. Still feeling the effects of the dream, he lets out a sigh. As he rubs his forehead, his hand trembles. Jerome enters his room, asking how he is feeling. He also advises the young man to eat. The steward says that if he can't eat anything solid, he suggests drinking blood. But Kylek asks him to take that away, because the smell of that thing makes him nauseous. Duke Blackwell asks how the search is going. Jerome explains that they are sweeping every inch of the island, but unfortunately, nothing has been found yet. Louise says that once again, she won't be able to see him or even discuss the schedule. She complains that they have been stuck on the island south of the capital for a month, delaying both the succession and engagement ceremonies. The housekeeper wishes that at least a body could be found, or if some kind of evidence would surface to make him accept Angie's passing. Letitia asks if there's any possibility that her friend is alive, even suggesting that she might have been rescued by a fishing boat from a neighboring country, but Louise simply says there's no chance. The housekeeper says that the succession ceremony must take place next month, and the same goes for the wedding. Letitia can't hold back her tears, and Louise finds it unbelievable, because she can't understand why Angie is so important to them. Autumn has returned. On the table, the tea is being served. Martin asks if everything is okay and if nothing hurts, revealing Angie there, who says she's fine and thanks him for taking care of her. There are only the two of them in that room. Martin laughs and says she still doesn't seem very comfortable, since everything must feel so strange. But Angie shakes her head and says she just can't believe anything that happened. The way they met in her dream, how she fell deep into the water, and how, miraculously, he saved her. And there's one more thing. The fact that they look like mirror images of each other. Martin admits that he's a little scared too. He says there's plenty of time to get used to it because they will never be apart again. However, before that, the blonde says there's something he needs to tell her. Nervous, Angie wants to understand what he has to say. Martin says it's time for her to know the kind of greed the people around them are hiding. He asks if she's heard about eternity, and the girl confirms. The boy asks if she wouldn't mind sharing how much she knows. For her, knowing about the remedies, assistance, and opium rose is enough. Martin says they probably had to do a transfusion of her blood to achieve eternity, and that it must have been painful. But Angie says she has no memory of them extracting her blood. She explains that what was said in the dreams helped her a lot, and that's when she started to question everything. Martin says he's relieved to hear that, and explains that twins often have a connection that can't be explained by science. He says they've been apart for a long time, but were unconsciously drawn to each other during that time, through dreams. Angie is extremely surprised by this revelation. With a sweet smile, she says she believes he's right. The twins talk about being in the kingdom of Vinkar, which Angie has heard is the capital, the citadel. Martin explains that Vinkar adopted a constitutional monarchy and is actively driving the Industrial Revolution, a place different from Trieste, even though they share a border. Like them, Trieste uses the Celtic language, but after the war they insisted on an absolute monarchy, so there are peasant revolts from time to time. And all of this is happening because of the greed of King Rainier VIII. Martin says there are people in this world who would do anything for immortality, whether they are kings, nobles, or merchants roaming the continent, amassing great fortunes. They lack nothing, so they only seek one thing: time, to enjoy their wealth and power for as long as possible. That's how John Blackwell succumbed to temptation. Then he sacrificed his eldest son only to be turned into an undead monster as a consequence. Because the final stage of eternity is the blood karma, the act of killing the firstborn and consuming his blood mixed with a drug. Angie is so frightened by this revelation that she jumps up, causing her teacup to fall. The girl is shocked at how cruel they can be. She thinks about Kai, and Martin only confirms it. The boy says that Edward used the older twin as a sacrifice, and if Kai had been the older one, he would have been the victim. Martin notices Angie trembling uncontrollably. That left her very shaken. Angie brings her hands to her belly and reveals that she might be pregnant. She says that no one can know about this. Not even him. Back at the Blackwell house, Killick receives Myle in his office. The Duke bluntly says that he knows what he did, that he was the trickster who opened the door to the annex room. Myle only wonders if that's why he was summoned there after a month. Without much hesitation, he simply confirms that he freed Angie. He says that the thing escaped from the basement and attacked people, also causing a fire that consumed the garden and the annex. Myle says the flames would have swept through the entire island, and there's no way to describe what it would have been like if Angie had been in that room. Kellic asks if he imagines himself as her savior. Myle claims that he's just saying the fire took many lives, that the island became a wasteland, and that all survivors went to the Te Deum. The Lord gets straight to the point. He says that he will provide funds for Myle to leave the place immediately because he coveted what is his, and that's why he doesn't want him around. Kellic says that Angie was his from the start, and that still holds true. Myle is thrown into a memory. Hester told him that her sister had a strange desire for Edward Blackwell, and that she called it love. Once, his sister took advantage of an opportunity at a ball to put a drug in his drink, and that's how he was born. Hester says she did her part. Myle asks if that means he should have just left her there. Hester says that if he truly loves her, then he must take care of her. Myle is brought back to the present. He admits that he likes Angie too, and that he confessed his feelings to her even knowing about her true feelings. Falling to his knees on the floor, he begs for the request to be withdrawn, saying that he will forget the past and live a quiet life, fulfilling his duty in serving him. After that, Jerome reveals that someone who shares the room with Myle saw the rose design engraved on his chest. He says he needs to investigate that further, but Kai, distracted, doesn't even listen to his speculation. The Lord remembers when one night Angie saw the rose on his body and asked about it. Kellic explains that it is a mark passed down through generations of the Blackwell family, something he's had since birth. Angie finds it beautiful and says that her eyes are constantly drawn to it. On the continent, Catherine is completely surprised by the visit. The lady even calls her Amber, amazed that her granddaughter is really alive. She says that the girl hasn't changed much and that she can see traces of Lillian and Ralph in her face. Angie appreciates her grandmother's affection. Martin then suggests that the lady come inside, knowing that it's not easy for her to move. He says he will prepare a cup of hot tea for his grandmother with the leaves he brought. Suddenly, something hits Angie. Then she calls for her twin. Angie reveals a faint memory of playing with kittens there. Martin is happy that she remembers, and Charlotte says that she always loved cats and dogs. The boy says there was a huge St. Bernard and kittens. He talks about the time when one of them ran off with the cookie she'd been given and how she cried, and Angie remembers it. Martin says the same thing happened to him, that his memories came back when visiting places from the past, then suggesting they take a look around later. Angie hears someone calling her by her old name, but it's the past doing that. She's taken into the happy memory with her parents. Her mother asked if she was cold, but the little girl shook her head. Amber laughs along with her brother Philip. Then finally, Angie remembers everything. It becomes clear what the lies were. Everyone around her was lying, and Kai is part of that too. Angie remembers when he said he wanted her right by his side, the way she was at that moment and forever. Angie wishes she could just forget him. Remembering him makes her bring her hands to her belly, which makes her sad as well. She asks her unborn baby how she can possibly despise its father. 3 years pass like this. A super cute little boy calls for his mother. It's Angie with different hair, almost unrecognizable. Noah runs into his mother's arms, and Bryn, carrying her daughter Patricia, explains that the boy insisted on seeing her. So she took the opportunity since they were on their way. Angie thanks her sister-in-law for that. Bryn asks if she's going to work late, and the former blonde says she'll try to finish by the afternoon. Her embroidery is very popular there. Angie says she has a lot to learn, but the woman says that even the royal family recently placed an order. She confirms, saying they ordered tablecloths and handkerchiefs, and now they want hats and shirts. This only confirms what the women say about how talented she is. Even her son Noah shouts that she is the best. Many seasons have passed and spring has come again. Angie has taken small steps to build a new life. She opened a boutique named Amber and brought her son Noah into the world. Angie can now enjoy warm, full days with her new family. Thinking about the past sometimes brings a pang to her heart. When that happens, she prays to bury those memories, nurturing her present with the past. Elsewhere, Jerome informs that diplomatic negotiations are progressing smoothly. After all, neither Vintgar nor Trieste desires war. He says that if they can at least reach an agreement on trade, Kellic cuts straight to the point and asks when he will go to Vintgar. Jerome informs him it will be in 2 days, and the Lord asks him to review the plans to avoid mistakes. They cannot miss this opportunity, because the upcoming visit is very important to him and to the Blackwell house. Back to Angie, confused, she asks if she really heard that right, and Wilhelm repeats that the royal family of Trieste made a visit that morning, as they plan to stay at the royal palace for the next 3 weeks. They are there to participate in the parade celebrating Vintgar's Foundation Day, but the visit means something bigger. The establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries will mark a significant turning point for Trieste. Martin adds that apparently the country will slowly open its doors, abandoning its long-standing isolationist policy. But Angie is very distracted because something could come of this, because it means that the Blackwell house will also be present, as they are a high-ranking noble family. But Wilhelm tells her not to worry, explaining that the list of people in the royal delegation does not include the Blackwells, only the royal guard and senior members of the Privy Council. Angie apologizes, but the man says he understands her good reasons for feeling that way. However, she still wonders why she feels this way even after 3 years, even when only his name is mentioned. Once, she overheard men talking about how the Duke of Blackwell still hadn't married or had children. Wilhelm says he doesn't know if it's intentional or if they are unable to conceive. But his concern is whether eternity still exists, and since the Blackwell house is so shrouded in mystery, there's no way to find out. Martin says one confirmed fact is that there have been no reports of disappearances in the last 3 years, and that they are considering that they no longer use remedies and have stopped performing the eternity ritual. They also can no longer obtain opium rose, which was cultivated on Cullinan Island. Martin also says that Angie is still at risk and should not let her guard down. In this way, she prays that he has repented of the past and won't make another mistake. At the palace of the Kingdom of Vintgar, the maid informs the guests that the princess is delighted they joined the delegation, even if late, and that she hopes their stay at the palace will be comfortable. Letitia thanks her, saying it is truly a magnificent chamber. As she runs her hand over the table, something about the tablecloth catches her attention. Thinking it was something else, the woman asks if it pleases her, explaining that it's a creation by Madame M, who is recognized throughout the capital for her good work, and even though she doesn't follow trends, her designs are sophisticated. Letitia remembers when she praised Angie for making such a complex piece in just 2 days. She also advised her to open a boutique where Madame would be added to the professional name. It was Letitia who suggested Madame Marigold, and Angie loved the idea. Back to the present, Letitia says it's all right. She asks about His Grace, being informed that he is involved in a meeting to establish diplomatic relations. The man says that on Foundation Day, it will be difficult to see him until the parade ends and asks if she wants to speak with him. Letitia is anxious and hesitant, but she understands that she cannot jump to conclusions. Since there is still time, all she needs to do is wait. So she simply replies that she was just wondering if he would attend the formal dinner. Letitia says she will have a light meal and go to bed early to prepare for the next day's parade, which doesn't take long to arrive. Angie, who now uses the name Amber, runs to Madame Schultz. Madeline Schultz is the owner of a boutique in the Citadel. Angie apologizes for startling the lady and asks what's going on. The lady explains that the consul's wife thought everything was beautiful, but the child's name is wrong. Angie asks if the baby's name isn't Michael with CH. Madeline explains that it is pronounced that way in Vintgar, but the baby's godfather is from Vincentine, so it's spelled Mikkel with K. She says there are several spellings for the same name in this country, believing it's because of the large number of immigrants. This situation makes Angie remember what happened with Myle. Madeline asks if she can go to the shop to redo the name since the delivery is due that day, and Angie promises to finish it quickly. The girl notices some unusual commotion, and the lady explains that the parade is starting, suggesting she take a look on her way to the workshop. Angie tries to decline, but the lady, being very insistent, reminds her that she has never seen it. Then Madeline says she's a Citadel woman and shouldn't miss the parade. Besides the procession, they hand out gifts and jewelry along the way, and the flower children adorn the prince and princess with garlands. Madeline asks if she really wants to miss the festivities. Angie agrees with the lady, thinking it's all very beautiful. Suddenly, something catches her attention. There's a specific carriage in the parade. It's Kai inside. Realizing something is off, Mrs. Schultz calls out to her, but Angie starts running through the crowd. The Lord also steps out of the carriage amid protests from his guards. Kai senses that this is Angie. The girl manages to reach the family home. She rushes in, desperately calling for her son, leaving the others confused, not understanding what's happening. Angie asks about Noah's whereabouts. The lack of an immediate answer frightens her even more. She runs to a crib, only to find the baby sleeping, and then Bryn asks what happened. Angie says that he is in Vintgar. She says that Kai seemed to have recognized her. Wilhelm advises her to hide until the Trieste delegation leaves Vintgar, suggesting she go to Lavon for now. He says he'll investigate the details of the situation, and if it's serious, she should go to her aunt's house in Rorschach. Bryn agrees with her father. The woman says that the Duke doesn't yet know about Noah, and that it seems they've stopped performing the eternity ritual. Angie thinks it might be wise not to take the boy, just for safety. Her sister-in-law says they'll take good care of him. Angie says she still has some work to finish and leaves soon after, asking the woman to explain everything to Martin in her place. She's taken back to the memory of when she saw him. Mentally, she scolds herself not to think about him. This situation leaves her deeply shaken, making her consider the possibility of something happening to her and trusting Noah to her sister-in-law. There are 2 weeks left before the Blackwells return to Trieste. They want to find her before then. Kylek says she was wearing a brown wig and casual clothes, as if she was just strolling. So he orders the search to expand to the outskirts of the Citadel. Jerome simply agrees. He tells the man to rest and let them handle the search since the Duke spent hours sweeping the streets. Duke Kylek lets out a tired sigh. His heart won't stop racing. Angie was buried in the crowd. But for him, it felt like the world around him disappeared. Even so, he recognized her immediately. Kylek sighs as he says her name. He wonders how he could not recognize her. Suddenly, someone calls him. The man, desperate, says they are in trouble, and the administrator urges him to speak more quietly. The man is visibly shaken. Then he warns that His Majesty has disappeared. He explains that with the help of Vintgar's royal guard, they are searching for him and that the last time they saw him was when the parade was ending. Jerome grows deeply concerned, as does Kai, about the whereabouts of Rainier VIII, the puppet king of Trieste who holds the weakest hearts. If someone intends to make an attempt on his life, it can only be the second in line to the throne, who has been waiting for the chance to dethrone his older brother. That is Grand Duke Winston. Kylek orders an investigation into what he's doing, especially with those he's been secretly contacting. Everything seems calm outside the palace, but the royal guard is watching everything. One of them says that, as predicted, the parade in the Citadel was the perfect opportunity, because while Vintgar's royal guard gathered for the parade, their puppet king remained confined inside the palace. So they laugh, saying that the new master made a wise decision. The guard calls out to a distant shadow. He says he hopes he's not dozing off. Myle approaches these men, making it clear that he heard them talking about the plan to follow the new master's orders and get rid of the puppet king. The long-haired man tells them not to forget that they must leave evidence as if it were the work of someone from Vintgar, so that the master can present a justification for cutting diplomatic ties with Vintgar. In the past, Louise entrusted him with another task. She told him to contact Grand Duke Winston and obtain secret orders without anyone knowing. The woman also tells him to make sure he doesn't attract his lordship's attention. Even after all these years, it seems she hasn't retired from her malicious schemes. A guard says that the master's plan is to extort compensation from Vintgar before closing the gates again and, at the same time, eliminate the thorn in his side. What the master and the private council ultimately want is a perpetual society based on classes. Then Myle interrupts the men. He asks where the puppet is being kept. At that moment, Kylek is giving a speech, saying that now that the royal family of Vintgar has granted authorization, it's time to close the royal palace. He says that until His Majesty is found, no one from Trieste will be allowed to leave the Citadel. All correspondence and forms of communication with outsiders are prohibited, and the guards will be held accountable for their supervision. Alarmed, the man says they should inform Trieste of the situation, but Kylek argues that there's not much point. He says the royal family of Vintgar has agreed to deploy a large number of soldiers for the search, so there won't be a shortage of manpower. The Duke shocks them by saying that even if something has happened to His Majesty, Trieste knowing won't make a difference. Kylek says that the celebrations will continue until the day after tomorrow, and with all the bustling activity in the center, the searches should proceed without any issues, and that people won't find it strange to see soldiers everywhere because they'll assume they're there for security. Again, the man starts to say something about not trusting the royal family of Vintgar, accusing them of the kidnapping. With a heavy sigh, Kylek says it can't be the work of Vintgar's royalty. Then he suggests flipping the statement, pointing out that when the guards of Vintgar were outside, the guest palace was surrounded by Trieste's cavalry. So, he asks, who would they suspect of kidnapping or eliminating the king? Kylek explains that the royalty of Vintgar is well aware of this possibility and is currently under considerable pressure. The Duke says that considering they were the ones who extended the invitation, they will feel morally responsible for whatever happens. Therefore, he suggests that instead of raising suspicion, they should gauge their willingness to help and use it to their diplomatic advantage. He requests that, for the time being, they remain there. Kylek asks them to avoid leaving the guest palace for their own safety, and to ensure that guards accompany them at all times. Sometime later, he is walking alongside his administrator. Kalek talks about his suspicions regarding Grand Duke Winston. After all, the timing was just too convenient, and that although it had never been officially announced, His Majesty had an audience scheduled with the King and Queen after the parade and festival concluded to request the end of the monarchy. Jerome understands that this was the decision he had made. Kalek says it's because he wanted to escape. The Duke comments that he no longer seems interested in eternity. Suddenly, he asks where Myle Randall is. He instructs him to find someone to discreetly follow him for as long as necessary, which makes Jerome question whether he doesn't trust Myle. Kalek replies that he can't trust anyone at the moment. Jerome then agrees, saying that any suspicious behavior will be reported immediately. The conversation ends when Kalek starts coughing. The more he coughs, the more red liquid comes from his mouth. Jerome suggests calling a doctor, worried about his recurring cough, but the Duke refuses, saying he just needs some rest. Kalek says he will undergo treatment, but only after returning to Trieste with Angie. The Duke insists he's fine for now. During the night, a hooded figure sneaks in. He enters the room where the king is gagged. It's Myle, who asks if he doesn't find this amusing. The albino says that useless scum like him always meet their end this way. He says there's no need to reveal his identity, but that he owes him this last courtesy. Myle draws his dagger, and then says his name as he drives the blade into the king. Soon, his task is complete, and he throws an object beside the body. Then Myle leaves him there. Even as he takes his last breaths, the king tries to write a message with his own blood. That's it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the story. This time I tried to create more chapters so you could enjoy the story a bit more. It is indeed a little more dramatic, but it also has plenty of romance and twists. What did you think of the story? Comment below so I can better understand what you like. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Kisses and see you next time.